Hi everyone for listening. Hey everyone for listening.
Hey everyone.
that's the shortest podcast. That's it. I can't do this. I can't kill you immediately. This isn't right.
Alright, come on.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the podcast, which is currently
The
untitled.
podcast with no name is what we're calling it currently.
Yeah, which, you know, that's opening up a can of worms. Because if we call it that, we're going to have to play The Town with No Name at some point.
That to me seems like a blessing rather than a curse.
Yeah, I love The Town with No Name.
We all do, but anyway, who the hell are you?
I am ThunderPsyker. I am a YouTuber who many of you might have heard of. I do video game retrospectives on my channel, and I'm also a voice actor across several different projects of the internet, mainly relating to tabletop role-playing games, such as Warhammer 40k isn't role-playing, but World of Darkness is.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say you're most known for the roles of Kitten in both the If the Emperor Had a Text-to-Speech Device and Hunt of the Parenting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's me.
Exactly.
I'm that little cat man. Sometimes I'm gold, sometimes I'm blue. Really, it's like the Resident Evil herbs. Sometimes I'm yellow, sometimes I'm blue.
Beautiful. What a beautiful way to connect it all together.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose now that we've laid out your resume, we should talk about my litany of accomplishments.
Yeah, exactly. Tell me all about yourself, Ash. Who are you?
Hi, my name is Ash. You may recognize me from such classics such as the Dawn of War 2 announcement video.
Your claim to fame. Yeah. Which you didn't even realize you were in.
No, I was listening to that and I was like, who is that? Who is that mysterious person? Other than that, I have virtually zero internet presence. And my presence here is only really mandated by the fact that I've known you for very, very many years.
Yeah, too long.
16 years, if my memory serves correctly.
Fucking hell, 16?
Yeah, 2007, right? Or 2008?
2008, yeah. So
Yeah.
Whoa.
It's been a while. So yeah, I'm not necessarily someone you would have heard of, but hopefully we can have some fun time talking about some stupid games.
Exactly, that's the gist of this entire show.
So I know that you all know this person as ThunderPsyker, but obviously I know him in real life, and to me his name is Connor, and I will be calling him Connor, so you're all going to have to live with that fact.
That's fine.
Do you want to talk about the coronavirus pandemic?
All right, yeah. So that was the beginning of this. In the sort of wake of the 2020 lockdowns, when things were reopening again, I get a message from my friend Ash going, "Hey, do you want to hang out?" I say, "Yeah, sure." I take the long trek all the way over to Ash's place out in the old country of North Norwich, you know.
Yeah, we'll pass the castle.
Past the castle, yeah. And I came along over. I said, "Hi, Ash. You know, how you doing? It's been a while. Let's catch up." And you went, "I fucking tricked you."
And I said, "You ever heard of the classic Capcom PS2 game Clock Tower 3?
And I went, "Yes, I have. It haunts my dreams."
Exactly. Well, now it's going to haunt your waking moments as well, because we're going to play the entire game in one sitting.
We did.
And then we did.
Together, we just played a very strange collection of games, like...
Yeah, we're currently at about 50-ish, right?
Something like that.
Yeah,
We're getting there, although... Especially if we count the ones that didn't quite work out, where, like, we had to stop playing for one reason or another. But we've played a lot, and they're a very weird collection of games. They've got very little connecting tissue.
The word that I always like to use is eclectic.
Eclectic is a great word, yeah.
It's such a... Like, you would look at it and just say, how did you think of these games in this list, in this order? Like, what was the thought process behind any of this?
Yeah. So there's three categories, where there's the kind of games that are just terrible, that are just really not good. Like, for example...
Whether that be incompetent or just boring in a way that's notable.
Yeah. Like, we played Shadow the Hedgehog is my favourite example, because it's a terrible game, but like, when you got me to play Clock Tower, I was like, can we play Shadow? We immediately jumped into that.
Exactly.
Then there was something like
Escape from Bug Island.
Geist.
Yeah.
Oh, that already, I know one person who's not going to like the fact it's the saying that Geist is not very good.
I didn't mean to go on a tangent, but it's bad games that are very deeply personal to us. So for you, it would be stuff like Spyro the Dragon or Halo or other things like that.
Yeah.
For me, it's kind of horror games like Resident Evil or Silent Hill.
Yep.
A lot of RPGs like Final Fantasy. A lot of stuff like that we both just want the other person to have experienced.
Yeah, and so that, like, which is very different from things just being shit.
Yeah.
But because many of our games that we like kind of downfall, it does gradually become that when we get to Resident Evil 6, we get to Spyro Enter the Dragonfly, which that'll be fun when we talk about that.
I'm looking forward to our discussion of Spyro Enter the Dragon. So then next is just weird stuff, right? Like just quirky off the wall things that no one's ever heard of or even touched in their lives.
Yeah.
Stuff like Tulip.
Yes.
Yick, a postmodern RPG.
Y2K.
A game that never released in North America, but hopefully will be now that we've brought attention to it. Gregory Horror Show.
Gregory Horror Show is what this is all leading up to.
Yeah, Gregory Horror Show is the light at the end of this Resident Evil 6 encrusted tunnel.
Yeah, beautiful. You know, we'll talk about so many beloved games, and it will all be a little spring trap to talk about Gregory Horror Show, which will be beautiful.
Yeah, you can all look forward to that. Put that on your calendars.
Yeah. I was quite fond of doing this chronologically, but then we were like, there needs to be a decent sort of handful of opening episodes.
Yeah, there has to be a tone setter, kind of like a ground you can stand on before we talk about things people have never heard of.
Yeah, exactly. Which Clock Tower 3 isn't that well known.
No, that is not that game. As much as I wish it was, that is not that game.
Oh boy, that'll be fun.
And because we strive to be strikingly relevant, to be at the top of our game, the edge of the curve, we are going to talk about hot new release, Resident Evil 4, the 2005 original.
Yes! Finally I get to play Resident Evil 4. I've been waiting for the last 16 years since we met.
Just to be clear, when did we play Resident Evil 4?
We played this. We're breaking the mold a bit because I'm quite interested in us looking at our games in a kind of chronological order, though we might intersperse that with stuff we've played more recently and it's a bit more fresh in our minds.
Yeah.
But
next episode will be Clock Tower 3, for instance, which is the first game that we played.
Yeah. Whereas this is one we played kind of slap bang in the middle of our time. We played this in the summer of 21. This was, I think, like July.
Yeah.
It came off the back of us trying to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist of the Roses, and that turning out to be... I wanted to play more of that game, but it was so time-consuming.
Yeah, it would have been a real grind.
Yep, would have been.
Yeah.
So you were like, listen, all right, I'm tired of you fighting Weevil Underwoods. Get your bugs out of here. Here's some new bugs.
Here are some hot new bugs.
Hot new bugs from Europe. Ambiguous.
So I think the best place to start with this is to talk about how we felt about Resident Evil 4 prior to playing it. Because we're coming from this from two very different angles. So I think you should start with yours first before I go on my little diatribe.
Yeah, certainly. So this was a game that was always lurking in the background because I'm very much a child of the 6th gen. I played the PlayStation 2, my brother had an original Xbox, and my friends all had GameCube, so that whole era was very much my stomping ground. But parents had a very strange set of restrictions on what games I could play, which for the most part was often don't play anything that is for adults and clearly not intended for kids. Yet there were weird exceptions, like how I was allowed to play Dawn of War when I was 8.
So you weren't allowed to play Resident Evil 4?
No, I wasn't. So it was a game that floated around in the background. I think really my first proper exposure to the game was through internet parodies. People who wanted to do the Egoraptor kind of cartoon thing, who made ones of Resident Evil, and me not knowing what the fuck any of it meant. And then gradually it was this thing in the background where people going, this was a really great action game. Resident Evil 5 came out afterwards, and then it was this huge franchise I knew nothing about.
Yeah, because we're not really doing so much of an introduction to this game, because I don't necessarily know if it's really important to do so.
No.
Surely everyone who is listening to this podcast has at least heard of Resident Evil 4.
Yeah, this is, to put it mildly, this was the beginning of the third-person shooter as we know it.
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
Yep. If you want to talk about your introduction to the game, I think that might be important because you've got a bigger history with horror, and you're the person who said, "Let's play Resident Evil 4."
So let's begin as we mean to go on. When I was 3 years old, I owned a copy of Resident Evil 1 for the PlayStation 1, and obviously, being free, did not have a good time of it.
No.
I could barely get out of the first room. I got to the first zombie encounter when it's eating Kenneth's head and it turns around to look at you, and I just couldn't figure out how to shoot. I just got eaten by it every time. I think that experience has engendered in me a kind of obsession with the Resident Evil games that is worrying, to say the least, especially to my family. So I first played Resident Evil 4 in around 2008, 2009. And what spurred that on was that I went to a friend's house and saw his dad playing a demo for Resident Evil 5. And I said to myself, it's just games will never look better than that. That is it. This is the peak of visuals, is Resident Evil 5. So I sought out a copy of Resident Evil 4 for the Wii. I bought the Wii version. And I then proceeded to finish it 25 times over the course of the last 15 years.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, I own Resident Evil 4 maybe 8 times. I've definitely bought it more than that, but have sold those copies on since then. it's a game that I return to at least once every year, if not more than that. It's something that I think is very soothing. It's just so good, man. It's an incredible game. I think it's worthy of all the plaudits that it's got, and to me it's a very personal game, hence why I wanted you to experience it.
Yeah, and I don't regret it because I ended up having really good fun with it.
So I guess a little bit of housekeeping. We were playing the Nintendo Wii version.
We did.
Mostly because I feel that the HD versions lose a little something in the visual upgrade. It's two things really. It's one that the game was made to be played in 480p. And it doesn't, the murky visuals don't really translate as well as I would like. And also the increased definition results in a lot more seams being visible.
They do, yeah. It clearly wasn't designed for that kind of hardware when it was made. Although, on the other hand, what I was finding, because I replayed this game to get most of the notes for this podcast, and what I found is it wasn't just because of my familiarity with it on a second playthrough, but just the fact that I could see things a lot more clearly. That helped me a lot when it came to...
Interesting.
Yeah, just because there's like a puzzle where the whole gist of it is that you need to look around at your environment to solve it. And when we were playing, I was an absolute dumbass. I would just focus entirely on the puzzle itself and not the clues. And was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what the answer is. And then when I played it on here, I realised, oh shit, wait, it's the gravestones. The gravestones had them all on, because I could actually see them on my...
Yeah, it was much clearer. You could see that they were actually 3D rendered models rather than just background elements. It had baked lighting on them and stuff.
Yeah, on my HD PC, which... We played it on a big TV on the Wii version, but it was still running on the Wii.
So we were playing on a Wii, original Wii hardware. It wasn't a Wii U. It wasn't using component cables. It was just a bog standard Wii.
Yep, no emulation.
I'm a basic bitch, basically, is what I'm trying to say. We were playing with a classic controller Pro rather than the Wiimote and Nunchuck.
Yes.
I know there's a lot of people out there who are really, really into the Wii motion controls. Like the amount of precision that you can get with the aiming in that game using those controls is incredible, but it does make the game far, far too easy. So I thought we'd get the classic controller experience. So that's the way we played the game.
It's worth mentioning as well, you mentioned you've bought this game 8 times. It's because it released on fucking everything.
Yeah, so let's go through the list, shall we?
Okay.
I own the game on PS2, GameCube, Wii, Xbox 360, PS3, PS4, PC, and the VR version.
You haven't got it on the Zeebo?
I do not own a Zeebo copy of the game, exclusively because you cannot own a physical Zeebo copy of the game.
No.
I did also buy that terrible iOS version on my iPod Touch.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, because you got an iPod Touch, right? And you were like, wow, you can play more than just Snake on this thing.
Yeah.
And you were like, Resident Evil 4, wow, on a phone. And then you played it and went, oh, this is not Resident Evil 4 on the phone.
Well, talk about that as well. How Resident Evil 4 came to be then, shall we?
So, 2000, imagine the scene. It's 1999, and you are Shinji Mikami, director and, not creator, but the main talent behind Resident Evil. You're sent a development kit for the PlayStation 2, and you look at it and you say, this is a fucking crock of shit. I hate this thing. I don't want to make nothing for this. You then say to yourself, alright, we're going to put Resident Evil on a different platform. What are we going to do? We can either do the Xbox original or the GameCube. You go to see Microsoft and you say to them, what do you think games are? And they have no answer for you. So you say, alright, fuck these guys. That's a true story, by the way. That's why it's not on Xbox.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you go to Nintendo and you sign a deal to make Resident Evil exclusive to the GameCube for that generation. The first thing you do is you re-release, or you don't re-release, but you make a remake of Resident Evil 1. Obviously, Resident Evil 1 on the PS1 is good, but it's very much, this is the first time we've done this.
Yeah.
So it's very goofy in a lot of ways. So you remake the game, and then it comes out, sells like complete shit.
Yeah, right next to Luigi's Mansion. It was competing as a mansion game.
Yeah, it could not live up to that hype.
Scary house game.
I believe Resident Evil Remake sold about 1 million copies on the GameCube.
Which is good.
Not for a Resident Evil game.
Not for a blockbuster.
Exactly, yeah. Resident Evil 0 then comes out a year later, very much using the same gameplay and the same engine. That also releases to basically commercial failure, quote unquote, but also much lower critical reviews. It doesn't do very well critically. People are sick and tired of Resident Evil now. Every game is just the same fixed camera angles, tank controls. You're in a big house or a big spooky place, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
So you say to yourself, all right, this clearly isn't working anymore. If we want Resident Evil to live on into the next generation, to remain a blockbuster forever, we have to do something else. You then, and this is very important, fuck up 3 times.
Okay.
You go, alright, we're gonna make Devil May Cry. That's not Resident Evil. We're gonna make Haunting Ground. Nah, it's stupid. We're gonna make a game with hooks in it. No way. And then finally, they settle on Resident Evil 4. The game as we know it today, which is basically a third-person action shooter. Much in the style of Gears of War or The Last of Us or Uncharted and things like that.
When you mentioned that they make a hook game, are you talking about the 3 different builds they had of Resident Evil 4?
Yeah, so from what we can gather, obviously it's never been documented that comprehensively, but we know that one of them became Devil May Cry 1, which was being made by Hideki Kamiya, and they made it about a guy called Tony.
Tony?
Yeah, that's what Dante was originally called. He was called Tony.
That would have been a great Tony's Inferno.
Tony's Inferno.
what a source of inspiration, the literary classic.
We strongly suspect that some of what was the original Resident Evil 4 then became Haunting Ground, which is a PS2 survival horror game made by Capcom. I
didn't realize there was that much of a through line between those two. I assumed that they were just doing that because they went, we also make spooky games, so we'll have a team make Haunting Grounds.
From what I recall, some of the assets in Haunting Ground are from Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
And obviously they have Huey, who is a German White Shepherd, who appears in Resident Evil 4.
Yeah, that's a nice thing, I don't think many people know that. There's a dog in a bear trap at the beginning of Resident Evil 4.
You can save from the bear trap.
Yeah, that's a reference to...
Haunting Ground.
Yeah, our pal Huey from Haunting Ground.
Precious Huey.
Yeah.
And then the final version of the game, before it became the final version of the game, is the Hookman demo. The Hookman demo was Leon running around this castle, much like the castle from the actual game, with fixed camera angles. And he's running around, but every time he moves to shoot, the camera cuts to behind his back to the shooting controls in the original game.
Yep.
So they were very much getting to that point, but they were still clinging on to the camera angles, still trying to make it work with the third-person shooting, which is weird to see. I'll have to show you a video of it later. It's a really weird thing.
Absolutely.
The thing that's of note about it is that it's much more supernatural than the actual Resident Evil 4. There's just straight up ghosts in it, and a possessed piece of armor wielding a hook who's called Hookman. And that's why it's called the Hookman demo.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I remember there was haunted paintings in it, and the armor does eventually become a thing in the final release.
Yeah, and that probably has roots in that original demo.
Yeah.
When they were really just throwing anything at the wall and seeing what would stick, and what would Resident Evil become in this new era where the old thing wasn't working anymore.
It's interesting that despite Resident Evil 4's kind of, not really development hell, but so many ideas being thrown around, they ended up producing another great franchise with Devil May Cry.
Yeah.
And half of a good game with Haunting Grounds. And a cool visual piece, which, to be honest, that I would have been interested to see the Hookman demo become a full thing, but I'm very happy with the final result, which is Worms in Spain.
Yeah, so eventually so Resident Evil 3 came out in 2000, right? And then in between then, they did the remake in Code Veronica and Zero. But really, the gap between 3 and 4 is 5 years, which is crazy for Resident Evil back then.
Yep.
So that game finally came out on the GameCube in 2005 to basically the most adulous critical acclaim that any game has really received since Ocarina of Time.
I can see a little bit of DNA in those different builds here and there.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's parts of, especially, say, the middle of the game when you're in this big castle, and there's a bunch of wacky stuff. There's suits of armor, like the Hookman demo. Yeah. There's this weird lava room with a clockwork elevator that moves around.
You're going through a sewer fighting invisible bugs, and then you arise from a ladder and enter a room with swinging pendulum blades.
Yeah, those all strike me as things that would have been in that previous Hookman demo that they recycled. Yeah. That's the fun thing with Resident Evil 4. It is a duality of atmosphere in some really strong places, while also being some of the corniest, goofiest shit.
Well, they strike a really impressive balance. That game is it has a multitude of tones and atmospheres and vibes. Each section is so different from the last. It really straddles the line between different kinds of horror and different kinds of action. So should I give a brief rundown of the plot of Resident Evil 4, or at least the premise?
I think Ash is the best person to run down the plot, because you are the Resident Evil encyclopedia. You have played Gaiden.
I have played Resident Evil Gaiden, it's true.
Yeah.
I have played the Game Boy Color unreleased prototype version of Resident Evil 1.
Yeah.
So I can tell you a thing or two about Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
So Resident Evil 4 follows the fall of Umbrella from the original PlayStation 1 trilogy. Now, because of their fall, their legacy of bioterror is being spread across the globe by all kinds of hostile actors and dangerous governments and things like that.
Yeah.
In the middle of all this, our favorite floppy-haired dreamboat, Leon S. Kennedy, has
Such a
been
star.
recruited and trained by the Secret Service to protect the president's family. Much like he does of being a police officer, he immediately botches this job, and the president's daughter is kidnapped by a mysterious rural European cult. They're from Spain. Leon is then sent into this village to murder all the villagers, harass local religious figures, and to get Ashley back and save her monkey ears from turning into a bug.
Yeah, exactly. I think that Resident Evil 4 comes down with a very bold stance on parasites.
Yeah, listen, you may have all been bamboozled by the hot film Parasite, which taught you that parasites are good.
That parasites can be your dad living in the walls.
Exactly. They might be your dad living in the walls, and you should give them your food.
Yeah.
But Resident Evil 4 says that parasites are bad, because in this village, a mysterious cult known as Los Illuminados, which, in a pattern for this game, just means the light in Spanish, have discovered beneath their castle and their village some bugs that are like fossilized.
Yeah.
Like they mine them out of the earth
Yeah.
and then turn all of the villagers into horrible bugs.
Yeah, there's a whole thing in one of the memos where they go, no one really knows how they were able to unfossilize the bugs and how they woke up, but I guess they just were, and then the villagers got infected.
Well, the idea is that Ramon Salazar, the Napoleon tiny guy, who we all know and love, he is the Castellan of an ancient Spanish family whose duty it was to seal the Plagas underground. And then Sadler, the villain of the game, came to the village and said, "Hey, what if you just didn't do that?" And he went, "Yeah, fine."
Well, he is specifically Salazar feels bad for the fact that the Illuminados cult got excommunicated hundreds of years ago, and he was like, "Oh, I feel really bad for doing this.
Oh, I have my bugs."
Yeah, sorry about that. Here, you can unleash the bugs.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of like the premise of the game. It's what I like about it is that it's very disconnected. It's very self-contained. You really don't need to know anything about Resident Evil to enjoy the plot of Resident Evil 4.
Yeah, like Leon is almost a different character to how he is.
I wouldn't even qualify it with almost. He is a completely different person than he was in Resident Evil 2.
Yeah, which, to be fair, the events of RE2 would change a person, I think. You would
stop caring so much, you'd be sassier.
Yeah, when you fight all those spiders in the sewers, which unfortunately got changed in the remake into goo.
Into horrible goo.
But yeah, it's like that's I think that's a good point to make, actually, is that a good thing about RE4 that kind of helped it take off was that it's quite disconnected, and you're basically just following this little isolated incident in the Resident Evil world.
Like it's a new virus, it's a new villain. Umbrella is nowhere to be seen in this game. Like it's just completely enjoyable on its own terms, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's one or two nods, like a particular character comes back, which is sort of like
but I would say even the return of Ada. Yeah. You can be a newcomer and just think, oh, this is just some sexy lady from the past. Like, you don't need to know who Ada Wong is.
Like, people would just assume that they just dated once.
Yeah, exactly.
That's Leon's obsession with Ada Wong is...
it's the underpinning connective tissue of the entire franchise, apparently.
Yeah, look, once... I mean, Resident Evil 6 fucking rides on that because it's all it has left.
Resident Evil 6's entire plot is, what if everyone was in love with Ada Wong?
No, Chris Redfield fucking hates Ada Wong.
Kill Ada Wong.
Because Ada Wong unleashed a snake that killed all of his friends.
All of his goons.
That's, again, a great through line for Resident Evil. I wish we got back to it. Snakes and spiders.
And spiders,
They should just embrace it, bring them all back.
I'm trying to think if there were no snakes or spiders in Village.
Really?
Or in Biohazard. No.
Well, I mean, they had Louisianans.
They had Southerners.
Yeah, which was
the greatest villains of all time.
Yeah, exactly. The three great S phobias of animals. It's snakes, it's spiders, and Southerners. We can't put that in the podcast.
We would like to take a moment to apologize sincerely to our Southern listeners. We think your culture is beautiful and we respect you greatly.
I want to go to Louisiana. It's
really
nice.
I would love to go to Louisiana.
If I don't get arrested
on the no-fly list. Yeah,
for that
for this podcast.
I'll tell you what. No, it doesn't, does it? I was going to say this game has sharks, and I'm like, wait, no, it doesn't.
No, Resident Evil 1 has sharks.
Resident Evil 1 has sharks.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 1, all three of the animal phobias, sharks, snakes, and spiders.
There you go.
It's got all three of the main ones.
That's why it's a classic.
Exactly. But Resident Evil 4, a classic of its own for a very important thing. We briefly mentioned this was a very revolutionary game for third-person shooters.
Yeah.
And that's because just by what I assume is complete fucking accident, they cracked the code of how to make a third-person shooter game with this.
So we did a little thought experiment when we were leading up to recording this podcast, in which I said to you, what are the notable and beloved third-person shooters prior to the release of Resident Evil 4?
Yeah, and everything I said was games where third-person shooting was not a main focus. Like, I think my first answer was Zelda, and I went, wait, no, when you shoot your arrow, you go into first person, don't you?
Yeah,
so,
or you lock on.
Yeah, which is...
Like, to me, the only one that came to mind was, like, Max Payne.
Yeah.
And even in Max Payne, I think the shooting isn't very good. Like, I don't think it's aged very well.
It has aged a bit. There's a lot of classic games that were very big titans of their time where you do go back to them now, and other advances have made them a little bit obsolete. I mean, my controversial one is GoldenEye.
Yeah.
Like
That seems to be quite a popular opinion these days now, especially now that they've re-released GoldenEye and everyone's gone back to it and said, "Wait a second."
Yeah, like hold on, this is a neat game, but
like, why are we not playing Time Splitters 2?
Yeah. We did do on our list.
We did do Time Splitters 2, yeah. Look forward to that in like 2 years.
Yeah, when we eventually get to that.
Yeah. So you may be asking yourself, probably not, but I'm gonna imagine what the audience is thinking to themselves. What is it about Resident Evil 4 that was so groundbreaking? So basically, it's kind of odd to say because it's so ubiquitous now. But what Resident Evil 4 brought to the table, and I know there are some people who are going to be like, oh, there was this niche Japanese-only release that had this before Resident Evil 4, but it doesn't matter. What Resident Evil 4 did was it put the camera behind Leon's back. So you were looking over his shoulder, and then every time you aimed down the sights, the camera would zoom in a little bit over his shoulder to show you a better sight of what you're aiming at.
That meant that there's a decent bit of precision that's involved in that, but also it doesn't completely do away, despite not being a fixed camera thing, it doesn't do away with tank control things, so that means that there is a kind of tactical element to your movement and positioning as well.
Like, the most important thing about it is that, like previous Resident Evil games, you still cannot move and shoot. When you start to aim, Leon is locked into position and he cannot move until you stop aiming.
Yeah. Exactly, which is... I think that's kind of important for that horror element, is that when you have a limited amount of movement like that, it becomes almost like a real-time... to call it a real-time strategy is stupid, because there's no fucking base building in Gears of War. But
it's about positioning. It's about more than just shooting and running away. It's about knowing when to take shots and when to retreat and things like that.
Exactly. And that's a really cool part of it. And it's also what surrounds it as well. There's a lot of stuff that they do to make that combat really fun. Like the fact that there's now a new focus on precise aiming, whereas the other Resident Evils, it'd be like an auto lock on, right?
Yeah, Resident Evil, the classic games, shooting is just an excuse to waste your resources. There is no actual skill to it.
Yeah, like then there's a bit of luck where, you headshotted him and he's gone, but with this focus on precise aiming, it means that there's tons of things you can do where an enemy might be carrying a bomb, and you end up like shooting the bomb
and
to
it
detonate.
explodes on their person.
Like one of the villagers who attack you, they might throw their hatchet at you, and you can shoot it out the air, and it makes you feel like a fucking cool guy action hero.
Yeah. And if you shoot the enemies in the head, they'll stumble and open up for a melee attack. You shoot them in the knee, they'll fall to the ground.
Exactly.
You can shoot weapons out of their hands.
Your gun in Resident Evil, whether it be a pistol, a shotgun, or anything like that, is oddly your way to interact with the world in a... That sounds a bit odd, because all first-person shooters are technically that, but it goes beyond just this sort of thing of, I hit the guy to kill him. You are doing it to navigate your environment as well. There's obstacles where you might need to shoot something to shoot the chain on a bridge to lower it. You might see a little shiny thing and go, what's that? And you shoot it and you get a jewel.
It's just one of those games that has a lot of really neat touches, especially like when it comes to its mechanics, that I think makes it really interesting to replay and experiment. One of the ones I think about is that if you get grabbed from behind by Ganados, usually they'll grab you from the front and you have to do a QTE where you wiggle the stick to knock them off you. But if they grab you from the back, you take no damage. I don't know why you take no damage. It just works like that.
Yeah.
So if an enemy starts trying to grab you, if you do make Leon do the quick turn, guess what? No damage.
Yeah.
And you get a free melee hit when you knock them away.
Yeah. Most of the time, Leon will blow their heads off with that. It's crazy. It's incredible.
Leon just like bonks their heads and it just explodes.
Yeah.
But there's also like, I talked earlier about how the melee attacks give you iframes, but actually every animation that's Leon doing something gives him iframes. That includes jumping over fences or picking up ladders.
Yeah.
So if a Ganados throws an explosive at you and you jump over a fence at the right time, you will take no damage.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Or like, if you throw a grenade near Leon and it stuns him, so sometimes if you throw a grenade near yourself, it's not close enough to damage you, but he'll put his arms in front of his face. That also means you're invincible.
Yeah.
So you can do that, and an enemy will try and hit you, and you won't take any damage.
Yeah, I think I've managed to exploit those before for some encounters, but I don't remember how I did it.
Yeah.
As far as explosives are concerned, it feels like the hitbox to hit Leon is tiny, but the hitbox to hit any other enemy is colossal.
Yeah, yeah.
I can wipe out huge swaths of them, and Leon will be fine, and he's literally dropped at his feet.
Yeah, but there's lots of little touches like that. Like if you shoot the lake where you fight the Del Lago, it will attack you before you fight it and kill you.
He just swallows you whole.
Yeah.
Or you get rewarded for exploration, where there's a little bit in the castle where you kind of get out of the windows of the castle, you climb around the edges, and you can shoot at this nest that spawns these bugs. And knock that out before the encounter even begins, and that saves you a lot of pain.
Yeah, and you get another butterfly lamp from there as well, which is really cool. There's something that I wrote in my notes that I think was one of the most important things to establish about Resident Evil 4, is that it's a shooter, I'm doing little quote marks with my fingers, in a loose sense, in that you shoot things with a gun. But the structure of the combat and the way you deal with enemies, the gun is just one part of a beautiful little dance that you're doing. Where if you shoot enemies, they will be put into a state where you can do a melee attack on them. When doing melee attacks, you both hit enemies away from you and are invincible during the entire animation. So the game's whole setup is that you use your gun to shoot an enemy at the front of a crowd. You run over, kick them all down to the ground, and then knife them as they lie there. So the gun is more an opener to another kind of combat system where you're doing other things and just shooting guns at things.
Yeah, you can't like that's the good part about the staggering is and another part of that kind of action hero thing is you going up to a stumbled enemy and Leon just fucking roundhouse
exactly,
or in the case of the monks it's the suplex.
The suplex, yeah.
I think that's actually a slight deviation between how we play, because my approach with replaying this on a second time, I actually went very gun heavy and I didn't do that many tricks to knock them down, to knife them. I started out doing that and realized I'm drowning in ammunition. I can still shoot these guys. And it's quite generous with your ammo on normal. You can gun down a good few of them. But there's still a level of management to it. And certain enemy types will mean that I can't shoot my way out of everything. I've still got to be smart.
Yeah. Because that's the thing that's unique about Resident Evil 4 is that you are fighting dozens of enemies at any one time. There are so many Ganados in certain sections, which Ganados is the name of the enemy types, basically.
Yeah.
But you can be fighting up to, I think it's up to 20 or 25 enemies at any one time.
Yeah, that was... The largest encounters I can think of are the village raid at the beginning. There's a bit when you're in the castle where you cross over a bridge and a bunch of enemies spawn both sides of the bridge. You have to fight the whole thing off. Like, it felt bigger than it was, but I still felt so swamped with that, and I had to like...
It's a game about the horror of being swarmed. It's about being surrounded by hostile opponents and being able to have to deal with them with just you and your gun. Yeah,
like Resident Evil 1 had a large emphasis on these moments of smaller scale atmosphere, of a creeping dread, of a shadow in the distance, of one or two zombies that are going to be a nightmare to take down.
Like a lot of Resident Evil 1's tricks, it's like you go into a room and then one zombie enters the room behind you and you're like, oh fuck, one zombie.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm only carrying 6 things and one of them has to be my gun and the other has to be my ammo, and I've only got 12 shotgun rounds. What do I do?
And then Resident Evil 4 looks at that and says, you are a weak baby child. Here is 12 men with axes coming towards you.
Yeah.
Take them out with your pistol, idiot.
Yeah. You briefly mentioned about the village siege. A really, really good opener to that game is you just being overwhelmed by this massive horde.
Because you're going through this, I guess you'd call it a corridor in video game design terms, but it's like this closed off path. It's like a valley that leads up to the village.
Yeah, much like my favourite game, Crash Bandicoot.
Just like your favourite game, Crash Bandicoot. Yeah, exactly. It's even got rope bridges. You fight a maximum of 3 Ganados at any one time, which obviously for a Resident Evil game is like a massive escalation in enemy threat. And then you get to this section where you go to the village square and you suddenly have to fight dozens of them and they're constantly spawning and chasing you, and there's one with a chainsaw, and it's just like, it's such a great, okay, we've let you get used to the shooting and the melee counters, time to fucking put it to work, you son of a bitch.
This ain't your mama's Resident Evil.
Yeah, it's like your skill check of like, can you fucking handle this shit? Because this is gonna be the whole game. Like, and like the Ganados like knock down doors, they climb through windows, they throw shit at you.
Yeah.
One of the things we didn't mention is that they dodge you.
Yeah,
like, you shoot them and they duck out of the way.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh fuck.
Yeah, like it's part of that coordination of them trying to throw you off.
Yeah.
And again, with the environmental interaction, you can just knock the ladders down while they're
Yeah,
trying
and
to
they'll
climb
fall
them.
down. Yeah. It's really dynamic and like immersive in that way. It's super fun.
I was quite surprised how well I was able to do the nighttime house raids with a similar thing. Where when we were doing it on Wii version, I was struggling so hard with that. PC, I managed to get Luis to hold the stairwell and just keep pushing the ladders down from up there, and that was doing me quite well.
Like any good Resident Evil game, it's all about how much you can replay it and try out different strategies.
Yeah.
Like you can become really good at the shooting and make your way through the game just by using your weapons. Or you can do what I do, which is that you shoot one guy in the head, you run over and you kick them over. Like you do like shooting like bombs out of people's hands. Like there's a great section in the start of the game where you're in this kind of valley. It's where you're meant to use the sniper rifle for the first time.
Yeah.
But there's these kind of stairs that go up from the entrance of the area, and if you stand at the top of the stairs, the enemies will pull down at the bottom, and then the guy behind them will throw dynamite down at them, and they'll blow everyone up. And it's just like, it's stuff like that. It really does allow for a lot of expression and a lot of experimentation with the mechanics.
Yeah, I think that's a good point as well about the environment design. There are a lot of great environments that encourage you to think creatively with this sort of thing, because that section in particular, the verticality of it is great. And I love how sometimes you can shoot an enemy and cause them to fall down somewhere.
Like there are some areas when your enemies are standing on suspended wood bridges, and if you shoot them near the edge, they'll just go and fall off.
Also, a good thing about the kicking. You stun them, you kick them, you knock them completely out. I think you lose the money, but
you lose any resources that you would gain, but you didn't expend any bullets or many bullets shooting them, so it's kind of a good balance in that way.
Exactly. It's a game where you can be kind of brain dead like me and just go rat-a-tat-a-tat throughout the whole thing, or you can be tactical with it, and the game rewards you for that. There's a lot of benefits to trying to beat the game quickly, trying to beat the game with minimal resources. It's expression, as you say, is a very key part of. It's
just damn fun to fight enemies in Resident Evil 4.
Yeah,
like it encourages you to just really relish in the idea of mowing down these enemies in the best way that you can, and getting those style points and being like, oh, I bet I can do this shit, and pulling it off and being like, that was incredible. Yeah.
It's awesome. I really like the combat in this game. It's grown on me upon replaying it.
Because you weren't cold on it, but I think the heat of my passion for this game is kind of blinding, because I would argue that this is the best third-person shooter of all time. Like, there are some that I like almost as much, like The Last of Us. I really like the shooting in that.
Yeah.
But for me, RE4 is the peak of third-person shooting.
Yeah, I'm more of a first-person guy, and I'm also a Halo baby, which, depending on who you ask, is either totally expected or an absolute sin. But it means that I'm a little bit more of a fan of games where you have a little bit more fluency in your movement, and you want to be able to aim good, but it's not this total crux to your ability to then like do stuns and do all of these extra things.
Well, I think even I, being such an advocate for these controllers as I am, I still can't argue that they're not rigid.
Yeah.
And they're also not a barrier to new players.
Yeah.
Because they are weird. It doesn't control like any shooter out there other than its immediate sequel, Resident Evil 5. Like it has its own very unique feel, and they can be difficult to get to grips with. For instance, the right stick doesn't control the camera. I mean, it kind of does, but it just kind of pans it like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually move it.
Yeah, that was not too uncommon in some games in that era. This is a weird example, but I've been recently playing the Ace Combat games on the PS2.
Oh, yeah.
And the right stick does that. You kind of manually look around from your cockpit with the right stick. It doesn't help you with your camera much at all, but it's a little bit of situational awareness, which, you know what? That's a really oddly apt comparison point, is playing as Leon with his little gun in this little village.
Well, it reminds you of playing a plane game.
Yeah, it reminds you of playing a big plane game where your movement is also limited. Because
like RE4 still has tank controls.
Yeah.
You still move forward with the stick, and then you have to spin Leon left and right. You can make him like curve as he walks like that, but you can't turn on a dime in that game.
Yeah, and that adds to that element of positioning and movement. I think I remember there was one time where when I was playing it with you for the first time, where somehow by complete dumb luck I managed to perfectly move through, I think, about 6 bear traps.
Yeah.
And you were like, I don't know how the fuck you did that, because there's a ton of them there, and they're intentionally there to get you if you do that. And I was like, yeah, I don't know, I just did.
Because, like, for me, I think I've gotten to the point with those controls where I know exactly how to use them to handle any situation. And for me, there's a great source of satisfaction in that. But I can see to some people, they think to themselves, oh, these are kind of controlling and oppressive. Like, I can't move the way that I want to, you know?
Yeah. And it's interesting, because we opened this up by kind of saying this was a revolutionary game for third person, and yet you rightfully say there isn't many games out there that control exactly like it.
Yeah, there's nothing exactly like it. Nothing's really ever got to that. Like, no other game has such an emphasis on melee and positioning and things like that.
Yeah.
And that comes from the fact that you can't move and shoot at the same time.
Probably a big part of that is the fact that this is a third-person shooter that's intended to be a horror game, whereas now,
air quotes, horror.
Well, we can make that our next point of discussion if we want. Most of the time now, you know, third-person games since RE4 are either focused on being a third-person shooter and having those good shooting, or they're meant to be horror games that are still about that similar level of positioning, but they don't blend together in this kind of actiony way that Resident Evil 4 does. You know what, actually, I'm curious. I want to ask you about this.
Go ahead.
The guy who made this ended up going on to make, like, The Evil Within.
So Shinji Mikami would leave Capcom after the release of Resident Evil 4. Obviously, after he decapitated himself with a chainsaw after the game was released for the PS2.
Yes, as he said infamously.
I think he next made Vanquish. He founded Platinum Games, along with Hideki Kamiya and a bunch of other Capcom alumni.
Yeah.
So he made Vanquish, and then I think he directed The Evil Within 1, and then was hands off on The Evil Within 2. This is a great point for you to bring out my horrible ranty side, Connor, where I talk about how much I hate The Evil Within 1, which is everything that Resident Evil 4 isn't. It feels terrible. It's rigid in the same way, but it's nowhere near as satisfying to control. And the shooting is like loose, and enemies don't react in the same way. It's a travesty. It depresses me.
Oh, yeah. You know, this is sounding like ammunition for the list.
We'll discuss that off screen, I suppose.
Actually, that's a good point.
But it's the point of, like, even the guy who made Resident Evil 4 couldn't replicate Resident Evil 4 when he tried.
I kind of have 2 points I want to segue into. It's either talking about the game's tone or it's talking about the weapons while we're...
Well, let's go on the tone, shall we? Because the game's tone is, obviously, Resident Evil has always been B-movie camp nonsense. Obviously, we all know about, no, don't open that door, or wow, what a mansion, and things like that.
Yeah.
But Resident Evil 4 goes beyond. The game is cheesy as heck.
Yep.
One of the first things that happens is that you go into the village square and you hold off a siege. It's one of the most famous sections of the game. The enemies are then called away from the fight by a church bell ringing, because it's like, oh, we have to go to church now. As they walk away, our beloved hero walks up, looks around, and says, with no hint of irony, where's everyone going? Bingo?
And it zooms out.
Resident Evil 4.
Man, this fucking Leon, right?
Yeah,
He knew nothing about Spain going there. He was
So that's one of your favorite parts, right? Where he goes into a Spaniard's house, uninvited, just walks in and shows him a picture of Ashley Graham, the president's daughter, and goes, "You know this girl?" And he goes, "¿Qué carajo estás haciendo aquí?"
Yeah, and just speaks to him in Spanish, and he's just Leon, buddy. Like, he goes there and the church bell rings, and he's like, "What the fuck? What? People in Spain are Catholic? I can't believe this." In a weird way, it's a perfect parody of, like, American imperialism, which...
Yeah, this is the most second-term George Bush game of all time.
My God, you're right. Those were the years. It's beautiful.
We were gaming in the Bush years.
We were gaming in the Bush years, which, oh boy. Could you imagine if that series came out?
So the game is really just... Yes, I would love to see that. But the game is really just a cavalcade of incredible lines like that. Like, there's the Napoleon character we were talking about earlier, who he has two monsters behind him, and he refers to him to his hands, his left hand and his right hand. And there's a point where he's trying to kill Leon, and he says, "I've sent my right hand to dispose of you."
Your right hand comes off? Just...
It's so good. It's so stupid.
Yeah, Leon is simultaneously played as both the world's coolest guy and also the biggest idiot ever made. He is... I'm surprised I think he is brought up a lot when it comes to the subject of video game himbos, but he should be more archetypal.
He is really working his little socks off to
Yeah.
to be the doofiest hero of all time.
Which is, it's a shame because this is a period of time where games could be this campy. This is a game that can be, in some parts, a legitimately very good atmospheric little experience, and also be this corny, hammy thing. And
Well, that's greatly demonstrated by the fact that when Oculus ported the game to VR, they actually removed some of the game's dialogue.
really,
Yeah, so they took it out. It looks like the president's equipped his daughter with ballistics. And they took out Leon trying to date Hunnigan at the end.
Or what when he says, "Hey, Hunnigan, no
Yeah.
glasses." What does he mean? This is what.
No, because she's not wearing glasses anymore. He thinks he looks prettier with no glasses.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
It just feels like such a weird thing to latch onto.
Yeah, it's
Leon.
another great example of Leon being a dumb idiot.
Yeah, this is. I'll bring up the Leon attracted to.
Yeah,
list.
the hot
yeah.
live action scale that we've got going on right now.
from top to bottom, we've got Ada Wong.
Ada Wong.
Just met a girl once during the apocalypse and just
Yeah.
got obsessed with her.
Yeah.
Hunnigan, no glasses.
Hunnigan, no glasses, yeah.
Which, to be fair,
Did not care when she had glasses.
Yeah. Then I'd say Krauser, Salazar, just because they're back and forth is like a weird couple, and of course Ashley at the bottom. I was some great examples of the dumb dialogue popping up, like the very early on you have the woman with the pitchfork that's been stabbed into her.
Oh, and Leon says, "Guess they don't discriminate against sex in this village."
Yeah. You get these little totems that are hanging around with the Illuminados symbol on them.
Yeah, and they have like warnings on them, don't they?
Yeah,
and they
like-
indicate traps and things.
Yeah. There's one before the boulder chase with the.
Yeah. And it says,
Uh,
"Death to all those who walk through this valley."
Yeah. There's one where a bunch of skulls are hanging from it, and if you interact with it, most of the time you'll interact with them, and Leon will go like, I've seen this symbol before, or something. There's one where he looks at it and he just says, "Heads up."
Yeah.
And it's like, what fucking corny shit is this? This is great.
Yeah, it's really irreverent in that way. It really knows how to poke fun at itself. That's really.
I was also going to let you know, you probably know this, right? The achievement when you find Ashley's
Yeah,
crease.
securing the ballistics. Yeah, it's really funny.
What? Oh my god.
Yeah.
We can't get this game ever again.
I think what I like about it a lot is that the tone can switch between campy horror or campy ridiculousness and kind of actually quite effective horror. The kind of sections that come to mind for me is stuff like the Regenerators.
Yeah.
The Oven Man is a really good jump scare. Like parts of the castle are actually just straight up creepy. Like it's all kind of topped off as well by the game's credit sequence, in which it shows you this like weird storybook animation of the villagers being infected, and it's actually kind of touching.
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, this is a game where I just jet skied away from an exploding island with the president's daughter.
Yeah.
And yet I'm actually being quite emotionally touched by the way it can present this story in a different light, you know?
Yeah, it's still fun to, drop kick a Ganado,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
at the same time, I feel bad for the fact that they all got infected with this thing, and you
Yeah.
have this little story.
Like, obviously, Resident Evil 4 is a horror game in the loosest sense, but they can still walk the walk sometimes.
They can,
Yeah.
they can. And there's a few quieter moments of atmosphere I was noticing while playing where, you might go into a part of say the castle where the windows will be open, you hear the faint sounds of something screeching, and you're
Crows in the background.
Yeah, it's like, this could be a crow, this could be a bat, or this could be something that's gonna fucking kill me around the corner.
Yeah.
And you're left guessing. The Regenerators are just creepy. Like
Can you do your best impersonation of the noise they make? Yeah, they're fucked up, is what we're saying.
they are fucked up. They look a little doofy when they're in like a bright space.
Yeah.
But they scared me because it was the prospect of an enemy which I couldn't kill it, which you do end up solving that very quickly. But even so,
but it's still effective while it works, right?
Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing that you can go from.
I think about it in an even more micro sense, where you go from you have the first Regenerator section, and then you have the bit where you pick up Ganados using a fucking claw mini game, where you're in this big garbage room, and you for some reason they play along with it, like they stay in the room even though they can leave, and they're like, "Well, he's not gonna get me. He's not gonna get me." You just pick them up and put them in the trash. And then you go down that trash chute and fight the Iron Maidens for the first time, which are the Regenerators who can manifest spikes from themselves. And it's that kind of weird like ping-ponging from tone to tone, which kind of really brings it all together for me.
Yeah. and it can be a game of contrast, and that contrast really helps it.
Yeah.
I've come to realize over the last few years I really like things that are silly. Things that take themselves seriously might not be the right way to put it.
Yeah.
But there are things.
But things that can, it's like why I like Final Fantasy so much, because I think it's a game that can straddle so many emotional states and make them a cohesive whole.
Yeah.
Make it a complete package, you know?
Yeah. You look at, say, my example of that would be older, I say older as in like late 80s until mid 2000s superhero films.
Okay, yeah.
Where everyone is dressed up as a weird freak of nature. And they're giving these incredibly hammy performances, but they're not being smarmy. They're not making fun of if they do make fun of each other, it's in a way where they're just like, you're a freak like me.
It's not self-satisfied.
Yeah.
Leon never turns to the camera and goes, we've got to get a key right. That's so video games.
Yeah. Surprisingly good moment where you are entering the castle. You hear the muttering of the monks long before you see them, and it's quite ominous.
It's them going, go hello.
Yeah. And you're like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, like, what is happening in this castle?
Yeah.
Because, like, the way you get out of the village is that you kill the big cheese, and then you're walking up to the castle, and then, like, these bunch of villagers attack you, and you flee across the gate, and you flee into the castle and raise the drawbridge, and you're like, oh, we're safe from them, and then you look at the castle, and you're like, oh no, what's going to be happening here?
It's a fucking an evil castle.
Yeah.
They talk about it in the dialogue like, we just didn't think there'd be more problems in the castle. It's like, dude, are you kidding me?
Yeah, we thought it'd be abandoned, and then you find these ridiculous cultists, and you're like, oh, this is like their power base. This is where they're from.
Whoopsie!
Yeah, shit.
Shit.
But the merchant's selling a better shotgun, so...
Yeah, you know what? That's fine.
Yeah.
Just a massive amount of stuff from him at that point. It's like, do you want the red 9? Do you want the black tail? We can get it this early.
Yeah, come on. Let's get involved.
Buy the broken butterfly early. That definitely won't... There's definitely not a way you can get it for free. We'll like to mention that the every enemy has got its own little name if you ever do the target practice.
Yeah, because apparently the merchant runs a target practice minigame, and he has this little shop.
Yeah.
This little counter that he sits at.
The sell little figures of the characters, which I want to say... fucking bold of them to go, let's have a little fan servicey celebration of our game, and we're doing this before it's ever come out. And we know that people will like these characters. Could you fucking imagine if they had that shit for, like, I don't know, Battleborn, something that just never took off? Haunting Grounds.
Well, they have, in Haunting Ground, you unlock that endgame room.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the first room of the castle that you go into, and you can play this terrible minigame where you play as Huey. And you unlock, like, concept art and music and stuff.
Yeah. I guess that's not too uncommon.
A similar thing of, like, you're, like, a mega Haunting Ground fan. You're going to play it again to unlock these features.
It just doesn't have the same kind of, like, arcade shooting gallery feeling. Like, the when the results screen pops up for the shooting gallery, the little... It's on a little wooden target that has the score, and his little red eyes are moving.
Yeah. And when you win, you hear this, like, noise. It's a very charming game. It's very endearing.
Yeah,
like it's very. There's lots of moments that are very precious. Yeah, like when Leon jumps out of a window. Yeah, at the start of the game.
That opening sign of, oh yeah, right, this is now a weird, funky action game.
Yeah.
With these stunts and everything.
I mean, that's for me is a really good segue into one of my favorite. Or the thing that I think makes this game so memorable and replayable is the amount of variety that it has. So obviously there's the core that we've talked about, which is the shooting and the enemies and all that stuff. But then this is a game in which you're always going somewhere new or fighting new kinds of enemies.
Yeah.
I'm going to briefly read to you. I made a little list of the things that I could remember that you do in this game. You ride a minecart. You go through a death maze, you use a harpoon to kill a giant fish, you fight a robot mech, you do backflips through lasers, you solve a sliding puzzle, several sieges, you engage in a knife fight with an American commando, use a jet ski, shoot a cannon, ride a giant trash compactor. Yeah. So all things like that. Just like, it all makes sense. It all feels natural.
You're kept guessing as you go through, where the most recent part of the game I got to was like in the middle of the castle. And
it's chapter 5 or 4.
It's 4 still, and they're going... And every time I'd go through, I'd just be like, I completely forgot about the roller coaster. Like just this weird little tram ride that Salazar installed.
It's not even a gameplay mechanic. It's just used to take you from one part of the castle to the next.
Yeah.
And there's this great animation where like Leon and actually just get on it and go, well, off we go.
Yeah, they just sit politely on it. Whereas like a later section will have a similar thing of, you get on a minecart, but that's an actual combat section.
Yeah.
Where you're shooting things. It's a real adventure.
Yeah, it really, and it's accentuated by the fact that the game takes place over the course of like a day.
Yeah.
So when you enter the village for the first time, it is daytime, and actually that's a really interesting part of the horror of it is that it's set in the light. So there's sun and it's bright basically.
Yeah.
And then as you go through, it becomes more and more into the night until the end of the game when you ride the jet ski out of the island as the sun begins to rise on your adventure.
Yeah,
it really is just like a very concise, clearly lineated progression of time, you know, which just makes it really feel like a going places.
Yeah, that framing is great because the flavor behind the Plagus is that the Plagus gets they like the dark.
Yeah, they're weak to light.
Yeah, they're weak to light. So once it does fall into nighttime, the Plagus will actually emerge from their hosts and they will start like being a lot bigger and things. And as a result, that's a difficulty curve that's naturally tied in.
Yeah, yeah.
And I really like that as a
It's also another good segue into one of my favorite parts of this game and also Resident Evil, which is that every virus in one of these games is just magic. Like, the Lost Plagus, its entire vibe, right, is that it's this kind of parasite. They put it into you, they inject it into you, and it grows in your body, and it takes over your mind, and you can be controlled by the master parasite guy, who is Sadler in this case.
Yeah, like, there's a weird hive mind.
However, this Plagus is also used to make a giant fish, a giant man, a big plant monster, regenerators who are invincible apparently. Yeah. Like it's so much just we're just making up a dumb magic reason for us to have these ridiculous enemies.
Yeah. It is weird because my first thought with the fish was, oh, the parasite's just infecting the fish, but no, I guess it did just make that fish big.
Yeah.
But what the fuck happened with El Gigante?
Who is El Gigante?
There's just giants in Spain. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Europe. Europe.
Leon looking at El Gigante being like, who is he?
Yeah. For those of you who are like, there's no giants in Spain, it's like, yeah, sorry, Europe. Somewhere.
Of course. How could we have been so wrong?
Yeah.
Also, another great example, El Gigante just means the giant.
The giant, yeah.
And I'm fairly certain that the fish is called Del Lago, which I think just means the fish.
I wouldn't be too surprised. Yeah.
Which is just like, man, they really put the work in. They did the research there.
It's like how I name everything in my D&D games.
I kind of like to touch on how great they are as foes to be feared. Because they aren't zombies, they don't just shuffle towards you. They actually like coordinate and they say things to one another.
Yeah.
I actually listened to a video the other day that was a translation of all of the lines that they shout. And they yell things like, you fucker, or you bastard, or we're gonna get you. Or when you run away from them, they literally are, oh, he's running away.
That's great.
Yeah, like they have so much personality. And there's even like, there's lots of parts in the first section where like Leon finds a table and there's a bunch of food on it. And he's like, oh, I guess they still eat.
Yeah.
Or you find a Ganado in a bathroom and the implication is that he was peeing.
Yeah.
Because they're technically still alive.
They are, then the parasite is, like, the parasite's got them, but it still has to keep its host alive to some degree. It's not gonna utterly degrade the body, which it does make it interesting when you look at one of the logs that's lying around from, I think, Luis.
Yeah.
And he's going
because Luis he's like a researcher. He leaves a lot of notes about the nature of the Plagus.
Yeah. His whole thing with his research is, okay, I've tried to research these, like, other parasites that exist, and their whole thing just seems to be, I get into a little thing and directly control that to get into a bigger thing, which... This is a bit of an unintentional thing I'm getting out of this, but I think the implication is I've tried to figure out how this parasite works. I've got no idea. Like, this is unlike any other parasite we've seen.
This is a bunch of bullshit, basically.
Yeah. Normally, if it can control something at a lower level, it's to get into something bigger, but it can't control the bigger thing. These things are controlling people and big fish and giants. So, yeah.
But it's interesting because there is an element of, like Ramon Salazar, the Spanish Castellan, who is the Napoleon-looking guy.
Yeah.
He has his personality and his memories, and he still is himself, but he is being controlled by this parasite.
Yeah, it's great. He has a line about, like, I'm in complete control, and, like, but you listen to anything Sadler says, and, like, no, he's still a puppet.
Yeah.
He just thinks he's in charge.
And there's all those sections where, over the course of the game, one of the ticking time bombs is that you've been infected with the Plagus, and so is Ashley.
Yeah.
And there's a point where Sadler takes Ashley from you by just going, come over here, and he makes her walk over to him.
Yeah, and she just does.
Yeah.
And I think I quite like the Plagus as a thing.
It's very threatening.
It's
that really classic invasive body horror.
Yeah. Well, I know it's more profound in the remake that they're doing, but, like, there's one or two moments where I don't completely blow a guy's head off and the thing still comes out.
Yeah.
And that's dope. That's
Yeah, where you see the back of their head hanging off their bodies.
Yeah.
It's really fucked up.
Yeah, they do some awesome stuff.
Yeah, it's really just inventive in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like the fucking like stupid blind enemies we were talking about earlier, the Garradors, who are these men in like suits of armor
Yeah.
who have had their eyes stitched shut for some reason, like some sort of ritual.
Yeah.
Like it's like what why did these things exist? I don't care, they're awesome.
They will pick up on where you are if you run, if you shoot, if you throw a grenade.
Yeah, there's that really great section where you're going up these stairs near the end of the castle section where there's two of them.
Yeah.
And then normal enemies who run around you.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh fuck, I have to deal with these guys without making too much noise or I
Yeah.
will be knifed to death.
Yeah, and I tried shooting my way out of that and got fucked up by those guys.
Yeah.
I really wish I'd packed like an easy removal solution to them, but I hadn't. Which I'll get to with weapons, I think, when I mention.
Yeah,
'cause,
they're an enemy that I whip up the Magnum for.
Yeah.
Like, they're Magnum worthy to me.
I think did I have the butterfly at that point? I think I did.
Yeah, because you can get it with Ashley.
Mm.
You can get the broken butterfly for free.
I had a quick thought about when you shoot a villager's head
Right.
and the Ganado comes out of it. On the one hand, that's kind of a clever subversion of going like, oh, when you aim for the head, clearly that's the most vital part of the body, but then another threat comes out. That's kind of neat, but on the other hand, does it also sort of punish you for having good aim and hitting the right points on the body? Like, the logical ones? Because usually you hit them in the head and that's still quicker killing them than the body.
Yeah, I suppose so. But I guess the counterpoint to that is that you can still shoot them in the legs, and that still gives you melee attacks. And in fact, the leg attacks are stronger than the head ones.
Really?
Yeah, because the leg ones is how you do the suplex.
Oh,
Yeah,
of
so
course.
so it's better for single targets. It's not as good for crowd control, but
Mm.
it is better against individual Ganados.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, if you are TMPing it, like I kept using the TMP like the pistol and trying to aim for the head, which was stupid.
Yeah.
If you're at that point, body shotting them is fine.
But I guess it's like a balancing thing of you can shoot them in the head and you can get the chance of getting a crit and killing them instantly, but you have to risk a Plaga spawning and having to deal with that, you know?
Yeah, which I don't mind that in most cases because I'm just like, ooh, encounter fun, time to use flash grenade. But then again, they all ride a thin line of being both easy to deal with and kind of annoying, the Plagas. The one where it's the sharp tentacle that hits you, it feels like it's really the most deadly because it has such a range and it can swipe you so quickly.
Yeah.
The worm, the huge worm that can like eat your head, you know, that should be a big problem, but I find them usually not really.
Yeah.
And the little ones that jump out, like, they're very weak, but it's just another target that crawls out that you have to then go, like, I have to aim at the floor and deal with this. So, it's an interesting one. I guess it's good because they're all on kind of an even footing of, like, deadliness. They're just not necessarily, they're not necessarily the best part of the combat, but they're interesting.
Yeah, and I think it introduces some small amount of variance to the combat, where you shoot a guy's head off and that happens, and you're like, how unlucky, you know? It kind of brings that kind of tension into it.
Yeah.
I also think they strike a good balance with them being... You have to deal with them differently, but they're not a pain to fight. Because Resident Evil 6 has a similar system where enemies can mutate, but they do that from any body point, and they're so annoying to kill, and it makes it a real pain in the butt.
Yeah.
Whereas those RE4 ones, those are annoying and they can fuck you up, but if you know what you're doing, you can handle them. It's just another part of the system, you know?
Yeah.
It makes Ganados not pointless, I guess.
Yeah. I think that Resident Evil 4 can get away with doing something as boring as, now there's just a robot drone that's now here.
Yeah.
And, well, then, you know what, actually? I like the robot drones more than when you get to the kind of last batch of Ganados, which are just guys with guns.
Yeah,
which, not as bad as later games, but...
Definitely the weakest section of the game.
Yeah. The islands is easily the... It's strange because... I call it the weakest section of the game, and yet it's full of highlights. It's just that batch of enemies aren't as good as the villagers or the monks. I
don't mind them when they have the stun prods. It's just when they have actual guns where I'm like, it kind of lost me.
Which there's a little bit where you then fight Ganados after spending most of that segment fighting like the soldiers and the monks and things, isn't it? And it's nice to go back to them.
Yeah, you go into the mines,
Yeah.
and you see the villagers, and you're like, "You guys,
Hey,
it's Pablo,
it's Don Pedro."
yeah, Don Pedro, yeah."
Yeah.
There's the chapter that's 6-4. It's called the final chapter, And that's when you have to go across that massive onslaught where you get the guy in the helicopter who gets killed.
Ah, Mike.
But that section kind of blows because it's just not fun anymore to deal with those kind of enemies.
The best part about that section is seeing Mike just shoot up a bunch of those,
Exactly,
them,
yeah.
and then get tragically struck down before his prime.
God, everyone F in the chat for Mike.
Yeah,
a true American hero.
Yeah, I'd like everyone. We're gonna have a brief moment of silence for Mike, so we'll just take a moment. All right, it just got ruined by an ad break.
I hope you thought about Mike while learning about Raid Shadow Legends,
Yeah.
or about how you have stinky balls.
Yeah, thank you to not today's sponsor Manscaped for dealing with your boyfriend's sweaty balls for
Yeah.
you.
You're doing God's work.
Yeah,
Do you think Leon uses Manscaped?
I think that Leon.
Because he's got perfect hair.
He does. I actually think Leon might go for something a little bit more specialized. I think he'd go for like a lot of fancy conditioner.
Oh yeah, like a lot of grooming.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
This episode was sponsored by Squarespace. To get 10% off your first... No, we're not doing this, please.
build the beautiful website that denounces us.
Alright, yeah, we should hold a competition. Make a website that denounces our like, make a website about if Leon uses Manscaped.
All right, don't do that.
Do not do that, please. The internet.
Anyway, Connor, Resident Evil 4.
I want to mention as well that the village elder, who's kind of the end boss of Act 1.
He's the ending boss of the village, yeah.
Yeah.
Which you didn't know, his name is Chief Torres Mendez.
Yeah, didn't know he had a name because the characters only ever call him the Big Cheese.
Yeah, it's like it looks like it's the Big Cheese.
Yeah, he even on the radio goes like, I just confronted the Big Cheese of the village.
Like, Hunnigan's like, oh,
yeah, okay.
Then you steal his eye because they have eye sensing tech in this rural Spanish village.
Look, there's a clear technocratic autarky
Hmm.
that rules over the village, which is why Salazar's house has a fucking lava pool. It's fucking Bowser's castle, and his big robot he builds.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that we must press upon, is that you have to fight a giant mech.
Well, you don't fight him; you run away.
Yeah,
from
you run
it.
away from it, and it's in the image of Ramon Salazar. It's
Yeah.
a big French Napoleon mech.
Yeah. I like to think he's got that for PR purposes,
Yeah.
where he's like, no one will know that I am 3 feet tall if I build a 50-feet version of me.
And then you have to like shoot little levers on it, and it makes the hands move. And you
Yeah.
can jump on the hands. That is another dialogue scene that I really love, which is when Salazar has Ashley in his grip. He's like got her with him, and then Leon shows up, and he's like, I'm gonna take Ashley back, and he fucking activates his dumb big red button that makes Leon fall down this hole.
Yeah.
And as Leon's falling down, Salazar gets out this ear horn, and he's like listening out for the sound of Leon about to die, and Leon shoots the other side of it and makes the bullet ring in his ear, and he goes, kill him!
Yeah.
And that's when he sends the right hand after him.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, you provoked him, and now he's gonna send his real guys after you.
Yeah, alright, this is the last fucking straw.
Sick of this shit, Leon.
A beautiful villain.
Yeah.
Such a campy little guy.
Yeah, definitely up there in the list of villains in the games that we played. Look forward to when we talk about Clock Tower 3.
Yeah, Clock Oh boy.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of talk about villains in that.
Clock Tower sweep.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
gonna dominate that.
At the Oscars this year, Clock Tower 3 is going to be huge.
I will just come out and say it that Salazar is my favourite character in this game.
Yeah, Sadler, who is the main villain, is a real letdown. Even in his final boss fight, he barely does anything. Like, he doesn't even really say anything.
Yeah, and while playing the game, I noticed, I was like, I've heard this man's voice before, and I looked it up, and it turns out he voices every Nord in Skyrim.
Yeah.
So Bethesda just went, all right, we need accented people. We
must go to the greatest example of accents in video games ever, Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
In which apparently these Spanish villagers are all speaking in Mexican accents.
I guess it's like that's North American localization for you, right?
Yeah.
But the actor's all right. Like
yeah.
he's
just kind of boring.
He's quite prolific. He's covered a lot of things. I just find it so fascinating that it's like, okay, do your voice for a Spanish cult leader. Leon, there I am, I'm doing this. Okay, now do your accent for a Nord. Dragonborn, I was doing this. And they sound so similar, where I'm just like,
Yeah,
Oh my
his
God.
performance in 4 is very smarmy.
Yeah,
Like,
like fucking Sadler goes like, "Yeah, I've got no business with your small time thingies," and then Leon goes, "Sadler, your small time," and
he's like, "Oh, Leon, you're just an extra in my script."
yeah, it's like that.
Yeah. And the line I always remember is when he's talking about the financing of the cult, and he's like, "Well, an operation like mine requires money, you see."
Yeah,
And that's kind. I like him more when he's doing stuff like that.
yeah. It's a real. I'll vouch for Sadler's plan. I think it's actually a very smart idea.
Yeah.
Getting the win-win of getting the ransom money while also infecting the United States government with a bug.
Yeah, with the bug.
The Senate's full of bugs.
The Senate's full of bugs.
What do you think the Plagueis would do if they got into power in the US? I think they would probably ban that episode of Futurama where Fry rejects his worms. And instead, maybe they'd retool it because it shows that when Fry gets the worms, he becomes really strong.
It does, yeah.
Which the Ganados do.
Yeah,
you know.
Sign up for your local worming.
Although what they never realize is it's not that the bug makes you strong. It's that you just become a stronger bug. Like the bug is using you to get bigger, and that's what happens to the big cheese. Is he fights you and he's just all bug, no man anymore.
Yeah, he becomes like this weird like scorpion thing. Like his spine elongates.
Yeah,
and he has these like hook arms that he uses to climb around.
I legitimately thought when a similar enemy shows up on the island that was him again, because it's a similar like goopy dude who's insect like and crawls around and has all these things. You're in the caves.
Oh,
and there's
U5.
Sorry,
is it U5? Is it not the big wormy guy who has the big mandibles?
Yes.
Yeah. You have to go through the death maze with.
Yeah, and you have to try and drop him into the pit, and it never works.
And you like kill the human part of him, and then the bug part keeps going.
I thought that was Big Cheese again. The set piece is neat, but it's a bit of a boring fight.
Yeah. He's not a great boss fight. No. He does do that cool thing where he kind of like tries to grab you from the ground, and you have to do backflips to get away from him. I like that a lot.
Is it controversial to say that maybe the boss fights are the worst part of RE4? Because I'm not thinking of any that leap out at me as amazing.
Yeah, I like them. I think video game boss fights, apart from in like turn-based role-playing games, get a bad rap anyway. Like I don't think they're like particularly anyone's favorite parts of a game.
Yeah,
I like the RE4 boss fights.
They're fine.
Yeah,
they're fine. It's I'm just used to playing games where boss fights aren't great. Like some of my favorite games are Crash Bandicoot or Spyro or Halo.
Yeah.
Where none of them have figured out how to do boss fights, despite two of them being fucking platformers.
Yeah, those Crash Bandicoot boss fights. Oh man.
Oh yeah. No.
Well, I think for me, I think about it in the context of it being a Resident Evil game. Because the boss fights in the survival horror games are like terrible.
Yeah.
It's just stand in one corner of the room, shoot a slow thing as it moves towards you, run to the other corner of the room. So if in that context, I like them a lot, but they aren't the best boss. They aren't from soft boss fights.
No.
Yeah.
No. Thunder from the future here, editing this. Boss fights are definitely not the worst part of the game. Those would be QuickTime events. I have no idea how we managed to avoid talking about them across the whole podcast, but they're not as bad as some games, but by God, I hate QuickTime events. I'm so glad they died out as a friend. Back to the podcast. I think that's most of the stuff about characters. There's not much more to say about the Big Cheese.
No, the Big Cheese isn't really much of a character. He's just a threat. Yeah.
I mean, Ada's just mysteriously there. Despite being such a prevalent character, there's not a whole lot to say about her.
Well, it's the beginning of my frustrations with Ada, which is just it just reacts to everything that happens to her with like a sexy, sassy line of like, oh, I don't care about anything.
Which is not endearing.
No, it gets worse in 6 as well. In 6, she's insufferable.
Just to let everyone know, I forgot that Krauser's name was Krauser. I've got him written down here as Crowler. Which
it's close. I mean, you know, I'm not going to fault you too much for that.
Genuinely racked my brain on that one for far too long.
I mean, I always get Salazar and Sadler confused.
I did as well when I was playing.
Because they're very similar S names.
Yeah, that's why I thought that the Chief's name was another S1.
No.
Fucking Krauser.
Yeah, Krauser, the American commando, who is a character from Leon's past that has never been in the game previously. And they keep showing him and it's like, Krauser, you're back. And it's like, what? Who's this guy?
Yeah, like, do you think the people who'd never played any other Resident Evil just be like, oh, I need to play Resident Evil 3, Nemesis. He must be the Nemesis,
He is the Nemesis. No, he's not in any of them.
I want to mention this, actually. I noticed this about the Big Cheese.
Okay, yeah.
I feel as though he was meant to be a bit of a red herring for a Mr. X style character when you look at his
because he's
design.
got the big coat.
Yeah. Like every
He looks like Mr. X has grown out his beard.
Yeah, you have the Tyrant who's naked in a pod, and then you have Mr. X in his suit. You have the Nemesis who is in his suit and is also goopy, and then you've got Chief Mendez. It's like
It's like a through line.
yeah, and yet Mendez doesn't. He sort of has that role narratively because every time
there are
Leon-
some cutscenes where he like my favorite one is when he picks Leon up and he starts squeezing his throat. And he squeezes him hard enough that he can see that Leon's got the plagas in him.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, I see you have our blood."
Yeah.
He's got this really weird squeaky kind of voice.
Yeah, there was there's a I remember that cutscene getting to save and then going, I'm gonna go back briefly, and then immediately getting
picks you
another
up
cut.
again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because he's just in that room.
Yeah, and he's like, "What? This is my room. Leave me alone."
like, dude.
Yeah. And then mysterious red dress woman saves you, and it's like, who could that be?
You know what I thought about when
What's
I saw
that?
that again? I was like, wouldn't it be fucking great if that was Luis? He's just wearing Ada's red dress.
Yeah.
Like Ada is eventually revealed, but you get all those documents that say there's a mysterious third party and we don't know who it is. And you see the red dress, like, oh, Ada Wong's back. But then it's revealed, like, when you find Luis in the house for the holdout, he's changing out of the red dress, going like, oh hey. His dialogue on reveal, Luis, is such a fucking list of bangers, one after the other.
I like when he's like, "So you're looking for the president's daughter, eh?" And he's like, "How do you know that?" Psychic powers.
Yeah.
I like when Leon tells him that he was a cop and he was in the Raccoon City Police Department in his first day. And he's like, I had it rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, Luis is a lot of fun. And then they kill him.
Leon, I got it.
Ugh.
It's immediate.
Yeah.
I can't stress this enough to people who haven't played the game. Like, straight up, Luis just spends most of the game going like, I'm gonna go do this other thing and I won't elaborate on it.
He's like, I've got this incredibly important Plagueis sample that is crucial to the entire plot. Oh shit, I forgot it.
Yeah, and then he's like, 1 second, I'll be back.
Yeah.
He runs back in with it and instantly gets stabbed.
He walks into a room and is like, Leon, ah!
Yeah, straight up. It's a work of art.
It's beautiful. It's an incredible story.
Oh, I will say, as far as Hannigan's concerned, her character model seems to have not changed in the last 16 years.
No, so every time they've gone back to Hannigan as a character, so she appears in Resident Evil 6.
Yeah.
In the same capacity as like a support character.
Yeah.
And obviously she's in that recent remake of the game. And they always cut back to her and she's always in the same room.
Yeah.
With the same clothes and she looks the exact same.
Yeah, her character model doesn't look like it's changed at all,
Yeah,
which is a bit of a testament that this game looks alright, doesn't it?
This game is probably, if not the best, one of the best looking 6th generation games. I mean, it's the first Resident Evil game, well, not the first, Code Veronica technically had 3D backgrounds.
Yeah.
But it's the first Resident Evil game to have fully 3D environments.
Yeah.
Like, everything is rendered with polygons.
Yeah, it's legitimately impressive how well it looks for a game that is full of brown and grey, which would become the worst part of the 7th gen.
We should talk a little bit more about the characters.
Yeah.
Really, there's one character that I think we should talk about.
Yeah.
One that we've mentioned a few times but never really got into. And of course, I feel like everyone knows what I'm building up to. It's, of course, Mike.
Yes, my favourite guy, Mike.
Yeah,
He tried his hardest. I just genuinely are tragic.
He is. It's devastating.
You know, in the remake, he's gonna have like a big backstory.
He's gonna have a huge ass. Think about it.
So Capcom, right?
Yeah.
They're going to hire a bunch of 3D modelers to create a ginormous ass for this guy who spends the entire game sitting in a helicopter.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that what you're saying?
That is what I'm positing here. But I'm gonna quickly segue, Connor, because I actually have one question for you. What are you buying?
Oh, I've got some rare things on sale, stranger.
Yeah, of course we have to talk about the fucking merchant.
The best fucking guy.
The world's cool. It's so important to state that the merchant, you meet him, you're going in a room and there's a dumb window at the end of a corridor, and then as you're walking past it, he just walks by and goes, "Hey, got something that might interest you." And then you go around to the back and you find him and he's like, he just opens his coat and that's it.
Yeah, that's after you are captured.
That is,
You've just freed yourselves.
And then Louise ditches you.
Yeah, and then the merchant comes around. Fan theory, what if the merchant is Luis?
You think everyone is Luis?
Yeah, I think Luis would be a great character.
The merchant is an avatar of commerce because like you can kill the merchant and he'll come back.
Yeah, he's just back. It's never clear. Does he have the Plagas?
And he's got so many great unique lines. My favorite being like, "It's a nice gun, stranger."
Yeah. An excellent choice, stranger, for an avid gun collector.
Yeah.
All this stuff, which...
Like, he is a perfect being. He is beautiful. I miss him every day.
I do.
The biggest downgrade in RE5 is the shop is just like a menu. There's no character who sells you things.
Yeah. It's hard to top the RE4 merchant, but you can try, right?
You can give it a go. You can do better than just you buy it from a sterile menu with no character to it.
Well, I noticed you're wearing your t-shirt of the Duke's Emporium.
I am currently, yeah. I decided to have the branding going on for this audio podcast.
Yeah.
Where I'm wearing a Resident Evil 8 shirt with the Duke, who is a merchant-like character from Resident Evil 8.
Yeah.
Nowhere near as good.
No, but...
Although he does say, "What are you buying?" And then he goes, "Oh, sorry, heard that from a friend once." And it's like, oh, that's kind of cute.
That is cute.
Yeah. He also makes you lovely meals.
That's nice.
Yeah, you bring him fish and meat, and he makes you meals that raises your stats.
Another through line with Resident Evil 4, because that game encourages you to eat your eggs, eat your fish.
Yeah, eat your eggs, eat your fish.
And eat your greens,
the
herbs.
Yeah, there you go.
I like this game's approach to the... because generally speaking, as far as healing is concerned... You mostly heal by collecting these green herbs that you consume. You can combine them with red ones to make them into a full restore. And there's these yellow ones as well that you can combine, where when you consume them, your maximum health goes up.
Yeah.
You can apply that to yourself, and you can also apply that to Ashley.
Never apply it to Ashley.
Yeah. Well, I remember when we did our playthrough, we were at the final boss, and I went, okay, it's time to upgrade Ashley to full. And you were like, Connor... Ashley's not in the final fight, what are you doing? And I'm like, nah.
Well, there's actually one part of the gameplay loop that we've not quite got to, which I really like, which is the slight role-playing elements of upgrades.
Oh,
Because you can upgrade your health and you can upgrade your guns. And upgrading your guns is so much fun. Because once you've got them upgraded to full, they get one more mega upgrade.
Yeah.
That's like, oh, the shotgun now can hold 100 rounds in one clip.
Yeah, the striker.
And Leon, like, he takes the shotgun and he goes... 100 rounds.
Yeah. That was always something about the shotgun reload is Leon's like, okay, I've put 2 shells into this thing. It's now full. Like, whoa. Compact.
Damn,
yeah.
But that kind of brings the whole thing together because killing enemies gets you treasure. It gets you pistatas, which is the currency. And you can find optional treasures and you can do all this stuff and that feeds into your upgrading and your mechanics like that.
Yeah, the treasure hunting is cool because some of them you combine.
Yeah, there are like statues that are missing free gems and you can find the free gems throughout the levels and it makes it more valuable to the merchant.
Yeah, which I do get a little fascinated with them because I read the descriptions of things and go, it's neat that they decided to model a perfume bottle and an hourglass.
Yeah.
If there's one thing I'd like from the remake that is maybe those things having different values and things you can do with them, I'd kind of like it if you could if there was more of a dynamic aspect to that treasure collecting.
Yeah, I think there's a new system in the remake where you play like a color matching minigame, and if you're good at it, it makes the item even more valuable or something like that.
Okay.
But obviously I've not played the full game yet, so I couldn't speak on it. But
I mean, I like color puzzles.
Yeah.
That was it was. Gosh, I'm like an infant, right? There's like
colors and shapes.
Yeah, colors and shapes. There was one color and shape puzzle in RE4.
Yeah, with the lights. Yeah.
I got to and I was like, oh, oh look,
I figured it out.
What makes it purple?
Oh, I'm such a genius.
Yeah, I think that's how Leon's approach. He's like, red and blue.
What would this mean?
They make Ashley, look, I've made my favorite color.
I can't see from the bin.
Okay, you stay in there. Wait.
Yeah, so that's... Follow me.
Wait.
Follow me.
Wait.
So that's one part of the gameplay that we've not really touched upon is girl.
Oh, yeah, right. The entire crux of the plot.
Yeah, is that at certain sections of the game, you are accompanied by the young Ashley Graham.
Yeah.
With a heart of gold and a voice that could kill a man. I'm sure her cries of, Leon, help!
I don't find her that bad.
Yeah, she's got weird monkey ears. She's got an odd face.
You are so mean.
I know. Listen, Ashley, I love you, but you're a doof.
I actually came around to her design a bit. The thing that settled it for me was the fact I kind of like her boots.
Her boots are good.
She's got these massive brown boots.
I really like her remake design. I think she looks really cool in that.
But as far as Ashley and gameplay is concerned...
So you have Ashley with you. She has a health bar. She can be killed. You can shoot her. And I know a lot of people hear that and they're like, oh, this game's got an escort quest. It can't be that good. But it's really not that bad.
No.
The thing about it is that the enemy's plan, their dumb evil plan...
Oh, our plan.
Our plan is what they write on their own documents in English. Is that they're going to kidnap Ashley, turn her into a bug, and send her back to the United States to turn the president into a bug.
Yeah.
And apparently a majority of the Congress as well, I don't know.
They want a majority in the Senate.
Yeah, before they can do anything, before it gets 60 bugs.
60.
Because of that, they do attack her and they can kill her,
Yeah.
but they more often pick her up.
Yeah.
And they try and carry her off.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of time to shoot them down before they can do so.
Yeah, like, I have a lot of fun with that when I just, like, knock down one of the Ganados that's trying to carry her away and they just go...
It's my favorite thing when Ashley dies,
Yeah.
and or she gets taken away, and Leon, like, the game ends, but Leon doesn't die.
Yeah.
So he just falls to the ground and goes, "Oh no,
Yeah. Oh, no.
I really fucked this one up."
Calls up Hunnigan and just goes like, so, was she like a dead or alive thing? Or... Because, I mean, she's not a bug anymore.
Why can't the president just make another one?
Their plan is stopped.
Yeah. Like, Leon would just call them and go, "Yeah, if your daughter comes home, she's a bug."
You actually spend the final third of the game instead being unemployed as Leon, and you're using his talents to work in, like, Home Depot.
Well, it's like the end of Red Dead Redemption.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm a big fan of quirky gameplay bits like that.
Yeah.
That would have been
Like putting
fun.
Ashley in a bin.
Like putting Ashley in a bin, which, yeah, always the hiding place for Ashley is Ashley, get in this bin.
Yeah. There's nothing in the bin, apparently. It's for Ashley's only.
Yeah, for your Ashleys only.
Yeah.
When I went through the village, there was a point where I looked at an area of the map and I went, "Why is there a dumpster here? Like, I've not got Ashley," and I realized, oh yeah, I have to go through here later.
Yeah, I'll come back here with Ashley.
That's here for.
Well, it's like I was going through the remake demo, which is just the village C section, and I walked up to this like yellow paint on the wall, and I was like, "What's this?" And it gave me the lift up Ashley prompt, and I was like, "Oh, I haven't even got Ashley yet."
Yeah. Which the original avoids that. Like, you do the boss fight where you have the liquid nitrogen tanks. When before the right hand actually turns up, the prompt is just to inspect it and for Leon to go, "Why is there liquid nitrogen down here?" And then as soon as the boss fight's actually happening, it's knock it over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you get that prompt later.
Yeah, so interesting. I wonder if the remake will fuck that up.
I also like parts where, before boss fights, Leon will like look at a building and go, "Actually, you shouldn't go in there. I got a bad feeling about this building."
All right, there's a weird barn.
Yeah.
The memos you get are just never acknowledged by the characters, because one of them is literally, "Okay, it seems that we can't beat Leon any normal way. Here's a picture of a big hut. We're gonna confront him in there. We're gonna trap him in there." So I like to think that's the one moment where Leon was like, "Wait a minute.
I read about this.
This is just like the memo."
Well, my favorite variant of that is the two paths after the Night Siege, where you can either fight another El Gigante or you can fight a horde of villagers. And you find this memo that's like, "All right, fuckers, we can't beat this guy. We're gonna have 2 different traps." And then it's like, oh, do they hand that out to like the village elders? And they're like, "All right, everyone, gather around.
Yeah.
New word from the boss."
Although on the subject of they're trying not to kill her, I love one of the traps in the game where little man Salazar has trapped them in a roof.
That's like collapsing down. Yeah,
a room where the roof's gonna crush them, and he runs off. He goes,
yeah, and like he doesn't say anything. You just see him for like 2 seconds running off.
Yeah, it's mega slow. You have enough time to shoot the 4 glowing buttons on the roof to stop it happening. So clearly Salazar was like, "This is part of my trick."
I like the one where you go into this corridor and then like the door closes and these 2 guys on this massive drill start drilling down the corridor towards Ashley.
That's the part of the mega plan.
Yeah.
It's right after the crushing room. So Salazar was like, "Okay, I'm going to do that. I'm then going to trap Leon and Ashley in 2 different parts of the corridor and have my big drill crush him." And naturally Ashley is the one who's actually trapped.
And you defeat the big drill by shooting the guys who are driving it, and it just stops.
Yeah, it just... And then
the door opens.
Like, I think Salazar was just like, Ah, shit, the wrong one's on the wrong side.
I must really, really hire a better contractor for this. This is not a good plan. Hope my lava room is fun.
Don't worry, my men on my big fiery towers will burn the American into a crisp, and then just like they get shot with a sniper once, and
the towers fall down.
Yeah, they crash into the lava. A little treasure chest pops up, and it's like, okay, good sport, Salazar.
Yeah,
I'm glad you have this. Just gonna come out and say it. The castle is my favorite part of the whole game.
Yeah, I kind of think one of my things with the game is that I actually think the game gets. It's weird because I like the castle too, but I'm always like I remember the village most fondly, and then the castle is not as good, and then the island is not as good.
Yeah.
But I kind of, if you ask me on a different day, I probably would agree that the castle is the best part.
Well, there's preference, right?
Yeah,
I mean, as far as which bit is the best bit, that's a harder question because there's a lot of merits to like the islands.
Yeah, the island's got a lot of high points.
Yeah, that put it in contention for that. So I mean, that's a good thing about it. There's a level of consistency to environment, like how good the game is.
Yeah.
I do think it drops off in the third act, but even so, the highlights make up for it a bit.
Well, I really like, we were talking earlier about the first Ganada that you fight, which is that guy that Leon tries to talk to in English.
Yeah.
And I really like the build-up of seeing him, and then you fight him, and he doesn't act like a zombie. He walks quickly towards you. He's holding an axe.
Yeah. As far as Leon's concerned, he's just shot a guy.
Yeah. And like it's just playing that like bom 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 music, and it's like it's really good. And then like 3 more Ganados start attacking you from outside, and you've got to really start learning how to deal with multiple instances of them at one time, and it's a really good opening to that game's structure and feel.
Well, we're talking about the cast of enemies, which
is varied and broad.
It is. I mean, for one, I love the fact they've all got names.
Yeah.
Like I always know the chainsaw guy is Chainsaw Guy, but his name is El Salvador.
It's Dr. Salvador.
Dr. Salvador.
He's apparently a doctor. He's been to medical school.
I'm a fan of Killing Floor as well, and one of the bigger enemies in Killing Floor 1 is a doctor. It's the Scrake. Yeah.
I like to think that Dr. Salvador is a practitioner of medieval style surgery, where it was about quickness and efficiency rather than precision.
Yeah, and he had a great sense of humours.
So anyway,
we're going to talk about the weapons now. Your main navigation.
Exactly, your main interaction with the world, your entry point to the beautiful world of Resident Evil 4 and rural Spain.
Spain, yeah. Which, relatively bog standard affair for a Resident Evil game.
Yeah, pistol, shotgun, some new fun additions in a machine gun.
Yeah.
And a sniper rifle.
Yeah.
Which are not things you would get in previous Resident Evil games, apart from occasional, like Code Veronica had a machine gun, but it was like, you only got 1 clip for it, and that was it.
I imagine you're quite married to the pistol.
I love the pistol. I think the pistol is beautiful. I would marry that pistol. It's so good.
But which one's your favourite? Because
I am a controversial person. I like the Blacktail over the Red 9.
Really? Okay.
I just think the Red 9's too clunky. It's the Blacktail, you can shoot that gun like... Yeah. It's so quick.
It's got a very fast rate of fire.
Yeah. It's also that classic design, that classic pistol that I imagine when I think Resident Evil.
I think the thing that makes the Red 9 so striking is that it's a drastically different style of pistol.
It's more like a Mauser.
Yeah, it's an old World War One style pistol,
and it does more damage. It has better criticals as well.
Yeah, but the Red 9 is still my king. I love it. I did briefly use the Punisher for a bit because I got that for free.
Yeah, so you get the Punisher for shooting the 10 blue medallions. And its whole gimmick is that it can shoot through enemies.
Yeah.
Like it shoots 2 guys at once, basically. Which is kind of cool. Like,
yeah.
It just doesn't feel great.
It wasn't enough for me to then go, when the Red 9 got unlocked, it wasn't enough for me to go, I'll
stick to the Punisher, yeah.
Is the Blacktail the last one you get?
The Blacktail's the last one you get.
Yeah.
Although you get the Red 9 and the Blacktail pretty near one another.
Yeah.
I think the implication being that they are 2 different branches. They aren't better than one another.
Yeah.
I kind of wish it was the same thing with the Striker and the Jailbreaker, which are the 2 shotguns.
Me too.
Because the Striker is just better.
Yeah.
Like, it does the same amount of damage and you get better clip sizes for it. For clarity, so there are 3 shotguns in the game. There's the classic Remington pub action shotgun.
Yeah.
There's the riot gun, which I always imagine being like a police shotgun.
It's like a combat shotgun.
Yeah. And then there's the Striker, which is got a barrel.
Yeah, it's a experimental South African shotgun.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Nowadays, one of the most famous kind of shotguns is the AA-12, which is this big automatic drum-fed one. Striker's a little bit of a precursor to that, but... Okay. I'm certain Dr. White will come after us for getting that terminology wrong.
Well, I can take him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know it. You just shoot him once. You run up.
Yeah, and then you roundhouse kick him. I suplex him.
Yeah, that's
into our kitchen table.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
It's also, I guess, a shame that pretty much every starting weapon is made redundant.
Oh yeah, like the starting sniper rifle.
Oh,
never use that over the semi-automatic.
Yeah, because it's infamously worse. Even doing the target range,
Mm.
I thought I once did the precision one over rapid fire, and I went, I get a lot of sniper rifle shots when I do the target range. Let's use the sniper for the target range. So slow, that my targets would then drop down. I go, oh, damn.
Fun fact about the sniper rifle.
Mm.
So, whenever they've updated the game to run at 60 frames a second, every reload animation has been 60 frames a second as well.
Yeah.
Apart from the sniper rifle. It always plays at 30 frames a second for some reason.
That just weirdly hard-coded.
Yeah, it's something about it is weird like that.
Yeah.
It's also the only gun in the Wii version that isn't controlled with the motion controls.
Oh, really?
They use the nunchuck stick to aim the sniper rifle.
I guess it would have made it a bit easy, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
What I will make a brief point about the sniper. I found that I didn't actually need to buy the scope add-on for it most of the time.
No, yeah, the game doesn't have wide enough or like long enough environments to make you need a scope.
But while we're talking about, rapidly different ways of looking at the combat of Resident Evil 4, I am a converted man. When we first played RE4, I ditched the TMP entirely. I would sell all of its ammo.
TMP being a machine gun.
Yeah, tactical machine pistol is what it stands for. Because I thought to myself, I don't really need this like rapid fire brut gun. This is a precision game.
You also had me sitting over your shoulder going, the TMP's fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Don't bring the TMP.
Yeah. And I'll briefly flash forward as an example as well of when we played Resident Evil 5, where at some point I just went, okay, Ash, for the sake of ammo and make sure we've got enough rounds, you take all the handgun ammo, I will just use the machine gun ammo.
Yeah.
And I had a terrible time.
Yeah.
I hated using the automatic weapons in RE5. Shotgun was way better. I really liked the sniper, like all this other stuff, but the rapid fire was terrible. TMP in RE4, actually really good.
I refuse to accept this.
All right. There are results.
No. You can show me evidence. You can prove to me scientifically that the TMP is good and effective. Fuck the TMP. I never want to use the TMP. Get that shit out of my face.
I fucking killed Big Cheese Guy in 15 seconds.
I'm so happy for you. I'm glad you get to live your best life. Fuck the TMP.
It's the magazine upgrade is ridiculous. You jump from 50 to 100 in one upgrade. You do not need more than 100 rounds, and yet that's only halfway. Ridiculous. Actual damage, you can start to kind of outpace your pistol, not in terms of raw numbers, but in terms of frequency. Stun locking, incredible for crowd control. Not so good against, say, the guys with the shields or anything like that, or the knights. It wasn't doing that great. But just anything that was vaguely squishy or exposed, even bosses tore through it.
Well, I guess an important part of additional context is that I just hate machine guns.
Yeah.
I don't like them in any game. I don't like rapid fire weapons for some reason. But especially the TMP. For me, Resident Evil 4 is you shoot a guy once, then you kick him. That's how you do things in that game.
Again, I went very gun heavy on my last playthrough, so I didn't mind spewing a bunch of bullets into guys because that was my approach, and that's just a different way of playing.
Yeah, but the game allows for both styles, right? Which is part of the strengths.
Something about it feels good. Maybe it's visual feedback, or maybe it's just timing.
Yeah, for me, the 5 shooting is much mushier. It's nowhere near as direct.
Absolutely.
It's nowhere near as much of a point-and-click adventure game, like Resident Evil 4 is.
Yeah. Which, I mean, the ultimate point-and-clicker is the revolver. Not sure there's much to say about it. It's just powerful.
Yeah, well, there's 2 revolvers in the game. There's the Broken Butterfly, which is like a classic magnum, like a long barrel thing like that. And then, of course, there's the Killer 7.
Reference to another
member of the Capcom 5.
Which I'll invite any gun nuts to explain to me why a 1911 pistol is as powerful as a 357 Magnum.
Because it's called the Killer 7.
And it had,
That's one of those fun things where the game really does reward you for exploration, right? Where it's like, oh, if you go back to this area with Ashley, because you haven't got it the first time you go around. And it's really obvious, because it's like this wall, and the door is locked, but there's this huge hole in the top side of it. And even if you examine it, Leon is like, oh, if I had someone else, I could get up there.
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, cool, I'll come back here with Ashley. I'll get this, whatever's in that room.
Yeah.
And then you go in there, and it's a fucking free Magnum, and it's like, damn.
I was quite happy with that. Because I kept that in my mind the whole time. I was like, when I get Ashley back, I'll fucking go back there.
I did a playthrough recently where I forgot to do it. And I was like, my god, I'm a fool. I can't believe I forgot the broken butterfly. Jesus.
The Magnum.
Yeah, it's so expensive to buy it from the merchant. Like, it's just, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is rather pricey.
Yeah.
And there's the trick of buying capacity when
Yeah.
you're empty.
That's a really good fun thing. It's just like, although when you reload your Magnum, you're like, fuck, no!
Yeah. Oh, wait. I killed Right Hand Man with the Magnum, and I was like, the fight can't be over yet, so I'm going to reload.
Oh, and then he was dead.
And I was like,
Yeah.
To the point where I just went, I'm going to Alt F4 and
And redo it.
and redo it.
Yeah.
Just, no.
When you kill him with conventional weapons, does he explode in the same way?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, he does. He does like a little and yeah, completely gone.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was a good Foley for the audience.
Just imagine Connor, because he did this like Han Solo being frozen in the kryptonite, like like he really committed to it.
Yeah, I'm now picturing Salazar as Princess Leia and this horrible bug man being lowered into the carbonite, going like, "I love your right hand." And there was I think the most unique one is the mine thrower, which
isn't a real gun that exists in the game. Because no one has ever used it for anything.
Upon the replay, I tried using several weapons I wouldn't normally do.
Yeah, like the TMP and the...
Yeah, but I didn't have the money for the mine thrower, and before we recorded this, I still hadn't bought it.
Yeah.
And
it's just not useful.
Yeah, it's a neat idea, but the fact that it's this sort of weird timer, and it...
I much prefer, in Ada's campaign, Separate Ways, you get a crossbow that shoots explosive bolts.
Because that,
it's much more effective.
Yeah, more direct.
And the explosion is quicker as well than it is on the mine thrower.
Yeah.
The mine thrower takes forever to go off.
And then there is the disposable rocket launcher.
Yes, the skip the Salazar boss fight weapon.
I kind of wasted mine on one room where there was about 10 monks waiting for me at the end of a long corridor, and I just went,
nah. Fuck them.
So
I've become so set in my ways with Resident Evil 4, having played it so many times. What I do is that I use the rocket launcher you get for free on the right hand of Salazar, and I buy another one from the merchant to kill Salazar with. Yeah. That's just how I've always done it.
Especially if you're going for those like shorter times in the game.
Yeah.
Then
I recall when we did the Salazar boss fight in RE4 in our playthrough, it was the worst boss fight in the game.
It wasn't great. No,
it's very you get killed instantly if you get hit by one attack. It's like
a really unfortunate endpoint to what would otherwise be my favourite character.
There are 3 unlockable weapons that you can get.
Yeah.
So there's the Chicago Typewriter, which is a infinite ammo machine gun, which kills enemies, like every enemy in like 2 hits.
Yeah, the reload button just makes you tip your hat. There's no reason to use it.
There's the infinite ammo rocket launcher, which is obviously what it sounds like. And then there's it's called like the PLR-45, and it's like this hand cannon. Leon equips it to his hand like a gauntlet, and he starts charging it, and his hand shakes like grrr.
Yeah.
And you build up this electric energy, and when you shoot it, it just kills every enemy on the map in one hit. So you just run through the game charging it, shooting, everyone's dead. They're gone.
I guess there's a place for these things.
Well, I mean, I did a playthrough of the game using the PLR-45, and it took 2 hours.
Yeah.
Because when you haven't got to kill anything, you just run through, run through.
Yeah. Which, you know what, some people play games for a power trip.
Yeah. And it's hard to get the PLR-45. You have to work for it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that's how I would want to play the game though, just because what did we spend most of this podcast talking about? It was about combat.
How fun the combat is. Yeah.
I want to do that combat. I don't want to kill every enemy and leave.
Also, the PLR-45 was actually not in the GameCube version.
Really?
It was added to the PS2 version, along with Separate Ways.
Also, want to briefly mention with the weapons, the 3 types of grenades you get, because you get a grenade, a flash grenade, and a incendiary grenade.
Yeah.
Which all sound relatively straightforward, but because of the flavor that Los Plagas do not like light, the flash grenade gets its own utility outside of just blinding enemies.
Because usually the function of the flash grenade is that it puts every enemy that it affects in a melee state, so you can kick them.
Yeah.
So it's really good if you're being swarmed. You throw it at the ground, it just stuns them all, and you can just bop them all away.
I was using that quite a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would wait until there were 1 or 2 Los Plagas being escaping from the Ganados to just be like, right, fine, time for a flash grenade.
Yeah, because the flash grenade, because of the Ganado's weakness to light, will kill a exposed Plagas instantly. It's just gone that.
I have a question for you.
Lay on me.
You may not be, you're no game designer, but how come flash grenades will also kill birds? Or kill crows?
It's because they're small.
They are small.
Yeah, so there's a great section in the village in which you're entering you go through the arena where you fight El Gigante in the daytime and nothing happens.
Yeah.
But when you go there, there's this massive circle of crows. It's about like 20 crows.
There's a murder of them.
There's a murder of crows, and if you walk slowly up to them and then throw a flash grenade at them, they will all die. And they all drop money, and one of them drops a flash grenade.
Just restocking you.
Yeah. It's a really nice detail. Like, you can shoot a lot of the animals in that game, and they'll give you rewards. There's lots of things that you can just shoot, and it's like, oh, that actually did something.
Yeah, it's a very strange. Like, on the one hand, it's like I'm being rewarded for shooting random animals. But on the other hand, it's a game all about shooting things, and it's rewarding you for observing your environment and going, oh, my laser target can actually hit that.
Yeah, because that's one of the things we didn't touch upon. But like, your laser target, if you can't shoot something, it will just go through it.
Yeah.
But if you can hit something, the laser target will go over it, and it will be obvious that you can actually get it with your bullets.
Yeah. I think it might have ruined one puzzle. There's a puzzle with a painting of a meal, and the text along the hallway is talking about, like, it's using terms like the bread will open the meal of life and all of this stuff to hint that you need to shoot the wine bottle. But I think the wine bottle's the only thing you can actually target with the laser. True,
but also additionally, the wine bottle is rendered differently than the other parts of the meal.
Yeah, it's a 3D model that breaks.
Yeah. It's the same thing with the barrels that you can break, where they don't have baked lighting, so they really stand out.
Yeah.
Like, there's actually been a lot of discourse on Twitter recently about the remake having the barrels painted in yellow to make sure you know how to break them. Because as we've gotten more dynamic, realistic lighting systems, it's become harder to indicate, no, you can break this.
Which is to harp on with my weird obsession of this being a watershed game, a watershed for graphics, where, you know, you get to this point of realism in games where things just blend in. Why do I have an easier time finding things in Oblivion than Skyrim? Because things in Oblivion are bright green and everything's in Skyrim are grey.
Like, why do you need every video game protagonist in the last 10 years to say things out loud to indicate that you can react with them and stuff like that?
It's
like the Horizon Zero Dawn lady being like, I can solve this puzzle by moving a box. He just says that to herself out loud. I wrote my notes for this game at 2 a.m. in the morning yesterday. Well, I guess today, technically.
Yeah.
But one of the things I thought about it, I thought of the line, Resident Evil 4 is the original sin, but who are we to cast the first stone? It knows not what it did.
That's a good... Yeah.
Yeah, because Resident Evil 4, we say it's influential, but actually, I think it influenced games to be worse. It kind of kickstarted that 7th generation era of muddy, grey, dismal-looking third-person shooter games. But Resident Evil 4 isn't that.
No.
Like, it inspired that, but they didn't take the right things from that game that it was trying to do.
Yeah, it's and in much a similar way, it's also the game that kickstarted Resident Evil becoming this big action-packed blockbuster.
This globe-trotting action-packed, ridiculous explosions, extravaganza.
Which led to 5 being kind of mixed and 6 being...
a complete travesty.
Yeah, being kind of terrible.
Yeah.
You could also blame the films a bit, but I
mean, this game has straight-up sections ripped from the film.
Really?
Yeah, so the laser room in Resident Evil 4.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, that is a scene from the film.
The fucking the laser room. Oh man, the third act of this game is wild.
Oh yeah.
There's a few series like that where I think the lots of games in those in a series can be very good despite the fact they lead to worse things.
Well, I'm going to bring up this game a lot because apparently I know 5 games and I'll reference them ad nauseum.
No, that's fine.
But
go on.
I think the same thing about The Last of Us, which The Last of Us inspired a wave of cinematic, gritty, depression quest video games, especially from Sony's first party. All of their games are like The Last of Us now, but I don't think they quite capture the spirit of that game or what made it so attractive in the first place. No. They just say, it's literally, even Resident Evil, Revelations 2, you can throw bricks at people. And you have a little girl with you who does things for you. And they're trying to capture some of that magic. And it's nowhere near being close to that original game.
That's the one you're playing as Barry as well.
That's when you play as Barry Burton, yeah, exactly.
You know, who is also a dad.
He is a dad to Moira Burton.
Yeah.
Who says a wet, moist barrel of fucks.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a line?
That's a line from Resident Evil Revelations 2.
You know what? I can't judge that when we're talking about Resident Evil 4 and going, oh yeah, this dialogue's so great. Because, again, games can't be this campy anymore.
No, it's difficult to pull off this balance, right?
I think I would actually say it's a wider cultural thing of I think people's expectations of games have changed drastically.
Yeah, exactly.
And now games need to be more realistic. They need to be more grounded. They need to be more friendly.
They need to be more HBO.
HBO is a good yeah. And
I feel like video games are in their prestige television era right now.
Yeah, where everything's got to look realistic and you can't have this kind of arcadey feel to it.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 4 can ride these lines so well because it is within that period where games were still gamey.
It still came out for a console that was called the GameCube.
Yeah, and it was purple, it had a little handle,
yeah.
and everything was dolphin themed. It had a cartoony Zelda game that people hated at the time, and then now it's a little darling of a game.
It's really like a historical relic of like a different era, but it's straddling that line where it's got the best parts of the previous era and the best parts of the later era as well.
Yeah.
Like a game of that tone and style, but with not quote unquote modern, but like gameplay that holds up better than a lot of those games do.
Yeah. Oh man. That you really hit it on the head with it being the original sin. Like that's a very good way of putting it.
Well, I've only been thinking about this game for the last 20 years.
I guess I'll talk a little bit about playing on PC.
So, quickly before you go into that, as you were saying, the game is available across a fucking wide range of platforms.
Yeah.
Including the fact that it's on PC twice.
Really?
Yes, so in 2007, Ubisoft released a PC port that is terrible.
Oh.
It doesn't have mouse support.
Great.
You have to aim using the keys.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Alright, that ties so great to my experience of playing this on here, because the worst part of playing the game on PC was trying to use the tank controls on my WASD. Just everything else great. Aim with the mouse, beautiful. QuickTime events, not a problem if it's just waggle your mouse a bit. You increase the sensitivity and you're fine. Fucking just movement, I got into a few encounters and just went, no, I need to plug in my controller and do this that way.
Well, how do you do the quick turn?
The quick turn, it is on that, it might be bound to a button. But whereas controller, it's your action button and then
action. It's like action button and down on the stick. Yeah.
I was really hoping for a while I could hybrid play it and have effectively use
the stick for movement and the mouse for shooting. Yeah,
use like half of my Xbox 360 controller and then bind the extra buttons on my mouse to any other functions that I might need.
Yeah,
but what I ran into a problem was that the game would have a little bit of delay every time it was trying to figure out that I was switching between mouse and keyboard and controller, so I couldn't do it.
That's a shame.
But that would have been ideal. It would have been the equivalent of having the Wii nunchuck and a mouse.
Yeah,
and perhaps the future of gaming. I don't know.
That's the weird thing about the controls for the game is that because it's a GameCube game and the C stick is not good for aiming, when you aim using the left stick because you can't move. So why would you need the left stick?
Yeah.
They've reverted that on all the modern versions. So they've made it so that the right stick is for aiming the gun and the left stick is for shooting or for moving. Sorry. And I always turn that shit off. I want to move Leon with the left stick, aim with the left stick, and I want to hold down the right trigger to aim and press A to shoot.
Okay.
Every time I play the game, I always make sure it's got that control scheme.
I ended up getting used to the action button shooting and the trigger being to aim.
Because that's how it would have been in the Wii version, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think I was using the right stick to aim, but I don't actually remember.
Yeah.
When you're in the zone with a control scheme and it just becomes natural to you.
What are my hands doing?
Yeah, you're not thinking about it, are you? Yeah. It's the same thing with a user interface. What makes a good user interface? Probably the fact you didn't notice anything about it.
Seamless, right? Yeah.
Unless it's flashy and stylish and cool, then you notice it like, wow. There's a really weird formatting thing with Resident Evil anytime it's on a storefront, which is always in lowercase.
In lowercase, yeah.
I think I might know why. It's stupid, but I think I might know why. The intro cutscene where it's going 1998. I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 4 when it pops up is in lowercase.
Yeah.
So it's like, is that what you're married to?
Well, Connor, I'm looking at a PlayStation 2 copy of the game, your copy of the game, which is a limited edition steelbook. Very nice, big spender over here. And this is something about the game that people bring up a lot. Is that technically it's called 4 Resident Evil. But to your point, yeah, so the game is called For Resident Evil, and the game is entirely in lowercase.
Yeah.
Which is just, it's really weird. It's really annoying as well when you own it on a storefront and it just has that formatting and it looks terrible.
Yeah.
Like, Capcom, why must you strike me down like this, you bastards?
The scoundrels that
Those
they
rascals over there.
I think that might have been Shinji Mikami's like final deal. It's like, listen, it's gonna be in lowercase.
This is my vision.
Yeah, and they went, sure.
All right.
That's why the evil within is all in caps.
Oh, right. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if it is on Steam, but it certainly is on the box.
It is, yeah. It's got that really abrasive box art.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this will actually make the cut, but did we want to talk about the box art quickly for Resident Evil?
Certainly, because it's one of those great examples of the differences between regions on box art. Being in the UK, that means that we get the European box art, which is quite stylistic.
Yeah. So the original GameCube one is, I think it's my favorite. It's either that or the PS2/Wii one. It's this kind of low camera angle of this like clearing in a forest.
Mm-hmm.
This red, harsh lighting instead of like a blue sky.
Yeah.
And in the silhouette in the background, you just see Dr. Salvador holding his chainsaw, and that's it. That's the entire cover. However, this is not the art that you received in the American version of the game.
No, which was a 3D render of Leon pointing his gun.
Yeah.
It's got a red background too, but
it's like he's in the GameCube version. He's like more holding his gun in this actiony pose, and then you can see hordes of Ganados and Dr. Salvador behind him, which is kind of appropriate for the way the game is. Yeah, but it's nowhere near as nice looking. Yeah, like not even close.
I think in a weird way, the Resident Evil 4 box art in Europe is less indicative of the game because like
it's too artsy.
Yeah, it implies it's going to be about isolation, about being stalked by a single killer, which Resident Evil 4 has no nemesis style character.
There's no enemy who like really stalks you like that. Yeah. Even like, it looks more like the cover art for like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or something like that.
It's probably the big
the influence. Yeah.
And then, of course, there were HD re-releases where it's like Leon in a blue forest.
And he's just holding his gun.
And the big cheese is like reaching his arm out in the back.
Yeah, that's my least favorite one. That one is terrible.
I think the conclusion to that is the American box arts are more indicative of what the game actually is.
Yeah, they're more appropriate.
Yeah, but I love the style of the European box.
Yeah, I would never give up the style of the European box. Yeah. Like, I hug my copy of it every day. I've got it on display on my shelf in the way that I wouldn't do with the American copy. Yeah.
That being said, at least the American copy has a merit to it, and it's not like Eco.
No, it's not like Eco or Silent Hill 3.
Yeah.
Where the Silent Hill 3 box art is just a 3D render of Heather looking kind of bored. Just staring at the camera like, yep, I'm here.
That would be... In which case, we've gone through, I think, every detail that really matters about the game.
Oh yeah, we've covered a lot of ground about Resident Evil 4. Please do not expect many of the other episodes to be this long.
Yeah, I think... I might be trimming this down a bit, but for the most part...
Subscribe to the Patreon to get the full version. I've made that promise now.
Okay. You know what? We could make that happen.
Get excited,
yeah. We could do that.
Just upload the full 2.5 hour long video.
Yeah, I think in which case then, it should be relatively clear from our praise of the game, but would you recommend Resident Evil 4?
I would recommend Resident Evil 4 to everyone with a passing interest in video games. I think it's important to understand how influential it was on the industry, how much of a market's left, and also it's just a fun time. It's just a fun-ass game. Yeah. It's so video gamey in a way that's hard to describe, but it's just so much cheese and goofball and fun and ridiculousness wrapped up in this beautiful shell.
Yeah, it's very much... I think calling it a period piece is maybe selling it short, but it's really representative of its time. It's a one-of-a-kind game.
Yeah.
I can see there being a little bit of barrier to entry in terms of the topic of tank controls, which do benefit the game, but some people find that impenenetrable. They cannot get on with it. You've got
to give it time. You got to learn them. You got to not move and go, I need to move exactly how I want.
Yeah, but
I also want to make clear as well that even though I haven't yet played the remake in full, I still feel that once that remake is out, you should still seek out a copy of the original game. I think they're going to be two different vibes that are both worth experiencing.
That's something I'm interested in as well, because my hope for the Resident Evil 4 remake is for it to be a different take on Resident Evil 4.
Like a reinterpretation more than anything.
I think a good example of that was a little bit in the demo where I love that scene where Leon just walks into a guy's house and talks to him in English and shows him a picture of some girl, which is also a really doofy picture of Ashley.
Yeah,
by
it's
the
like
way.
it's like Ashley walking about and someone's taking this picture without her knowing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and him talking back in Spanish because what the fuck, I don't know English, idiot. But in the remake, he approached him actually speaking in Spanish and is more of a it's
like
more
he actually
natural.
put the work in.
Yeah. And that's no replacement for the original's like ridiculousness, but it's nice.
Yeah.
And if the Resident Evil 4 remake carries a similar tone to that, then I'll appreciate it existing. Like really, that's what I would want from the remake. And
Yeah.
the remake is coming out very soon. It might be out by the time this is released.
Yeah.
Um,
You can certainly play a demo of it now if you wish.
yeah, give it a shot, I suppose. Like if you prefer a slightly more modernized version of the game, but the original, it's sold so well that it's fair to say it's here to stay. Like they can't remove it entirely from.
I mean, it's so freely available on like every modern platform. You can play it on your PS5, you can play it on your Switch, you can play it on PC, you can play it on a fucking Oculus Quest, for Christ's sake.
Yeah,
Like, it's available if you want to play it.
absolutely. I think I would recommend the PC version if you've got a gamepad. Other than that, generally the HD versions are good. The Wii version might be the best old school.
I think the only version you should try to avoid is the original PC version, which is hard to access anyway.
Yeah.
The PS2 version, because it's a massive downgrade in graphics.
Yeah, which I'm holding right now.
Yeah, that's the Connor the copy own. Wait.
That's the Connor the copy
That's
owns.
the copy that Connor owns. The GameCube version is the purest experience, but it's actually missing a whole campaign, which is separate ways.
Hmm.
Don't play the PS3 or 360 versions either, because it's just kind of awkward and a bit stodgy.
Okay.
I would say any of the modern consoles, if you can get a GameCube copy or a Wii version, great. And if you have a MetaQuest, because you two have sold your soul to the Zuck, then that is a really, really good version of that game.
Yeah. I mean that I'm guessing that'd be a whole thing of its own. Is
Yeah,
just
basically,
the
yeah.
VR version
Yeah.
is. So to kind of wrap things up on our list, Resident Evil 4, as we mentioned, is part of our like legacy of things that we've played in the past. So
Exactly, yeah.
we've had a long time to think about the games on our list, and one thing that we did was we kind of gave them little rankings on to kind of compare them and contrast them.
Yeah. And we kind of added more as time went on to kind of celebrate different games or different things.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of games that weren't good, but we wanted to honor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So generally speaking, in terms of quality, where would you say that Resident Evil 4 would be on your list, Ash? Would you say it's like the top, relatively high?
In terms of quality,
Like somewhere in the middle, bottom, or like low or right at the bottom?
I can probably unequivocally say, in quality terms, I think Resident Evil 4 is the most well-made game we've played.
Okay, yeah. I think I'd put it relatively close to the top as well. Definitely high.
Yeah.
Unequivocally.
Like for me, like if we're talking about objective, separating my personal feelings from it, it's the remake of 1 and 4 are the best games we've played on that list.
Yeah.
And then Ridge Racer, as I said before.
Ridge Racer, I would actually vouch for that being very high, which another episode I'm very much looking forward to is Ridge Racer. And in terms of it being an interesting game, where would you sort of put that?
I think it's middle high-ish.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's inherently interesting in the way that, let's say, Tulip was. But it is interesting as a piece of history.
Yeah.
As a kind of indicator of the way games were changing.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting in that sense to me.
Likewise, like for the record, when we say interesting, that can be about... Games can be interesting for very different reasons. It can be either it's interesting to consider what their themes are, interesting what they did for gaming, or their just unique mechanics.
Yeah.
They might be interesting in that they were a game that was set to be really good and plummeted and ended up being really bad. A lot of games I give way too much credit on interesting for that. And I would say that Resident Evil 4 is kind of in the middle for me because it is a revolutionary game that has a very interesting way of interacting in it. But especially when you look at games nowadays, it's a trendsetter and things have followed in its example now.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not interesting on those merits. Like, in a vacuum, it's not that interesting.
Yeah.
It's more when you consider the things around it.
And then the final thing, which is arguably the most important thing for a game to be, where would it be in terms of fun for you?
Oh my god. I mean, it's one of the most fun games I've ever played in my life.
Yeah.
Like, I've played this game dozens of times. Like, I love playing this game. And I think the thing about the fun list is that originally it was more meant to be how fun was it when we played it together. which we ended up. I never really liked it so much because it was like try to put a score on your time with your friends.
Yeah, it was. We'd say play Crash 3, which I have a ton of fun with that game, Crash Bandicoot 3. But that same evening, we'd ordered food from somewhere, and it took 2 hours to get to us or something.
It was like missing stuff. And that put a damper on the quote unquote fun.
Yeah.
So, but if we're talking about how much fun I had playing Resident Evil 4, I'd say kind of high middle.
Me too.
Yeah.
I think I'd put that. Yeah, basically the same, high middle.
Fantastic.
Because, which is interesting because we as we say, it's some of the most fun we've had playing the games, but that's more indicative of what this list has been like, because as we mentioned at the start, Resident Evil 4 is not the best example of what we've played on this list.
No, it's more of a red pill for you people. We're red pilling you right now.
Yeah.
We're giving you something that you're not going to freak out about.
Yeah, this is more of a baseline for normal games, right?
Yeah.
This is an example of like, oh, here's a really well-regarded, successful, highly in circulation game that's a baseline for normality.
Yeah.
But some of the most fun we've had playing these games, I think the next one we're going to cover is...
Oh yeah, it's going to go some places, and I'm really looking forward to talking about some of the ridiculous games that we've played.
Absolutely.
Because, oh my god, there are some dumbass games out there. Like, it's gonna go places.
Yeah.
I really hope that you enjoy seeing this ridiculous journey that we've been going on.
Yeah, and if you're interested in continuing this journey with us, then please do continue to follow this channel. We'll be uploading probably like every fortnight.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about the next game on our list, Clock Tower 3.
Capcom's Clock Tower 3.
Yeah. We started off with a great Capcom game. We're going to go
right back to the top with Clock Tower 3 by Capcom.
All right. Well, in which case then, let's self-promote. Ash, do you have anything you want to share with us?
Yeah, if you have some free time, you can visit Connor's YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I really can't stress enough, I do not produce content outside of this.
No. I guess I feel a bit like a dick now. Like,
come over to my house, we'll hang out, we'll talk. Like, I love that. I wouldn't love that. Do not do that.
No, please do not come to Ash's house.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm just here to talk about games that I like.
Yeah.
And if you want to subscribe to ThunderPsyker, the OG channel, I would like that a lot too.
Yeah, feel free to follow me. I am releasing a video game retrospectives, which currently are covering the strategy games called Dawn of War. But I'm planning to kind of look at some other games shortly afterwards, which will
not include Clock Tower 3, unfortunately.
Well,
we'll see where it goes.
I don't know. I want to do that, which you know what, we'll see when that will be. But for now, thank you very much for listening, and in the meantime, I hope you have a fantastic day, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.
Fantastic. Well, goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Ciao.